The explosion ripped through the penthouse at 9:47 p.m., turning champagne toasts into screams and designer gowns into blood-soaked rags. While Manhattan's elite stampeded toward the exits, including the billionaire's own fiancée, one woman made a choice that would change everything. Elena Voss, the invisible assistant who'd spent 3 years fetching coffee and filing reports, ran toward the flames instead of away from them. She didn't know that saving Adrian Cade's life would bind her to a world of violence, betrayal, and power she never imagined. But some choices can't be undone. If you're ready for a story about loyalty, transformation, and love forged in fire, stay with me until the end. And when you're done, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this story travels. But the Veuve Clicquot was still cold in Elena's hand when the world exploded. 1 second, she was standing near the bar in Adrian Cade's penthouse, watching Manhattan's power players mingle under crystal chandeliers. The next, a deafening blast threw her sideways into a marble column. Her ears rang. Her vision blurred. The champagne flute shattered against the floor. She tasted copper, felt heat on her face. When her eyes focused, the penthouse had transformed into hell. Flames crawled up the eastern wall where the gift table had been. Smoke poured from what used to be the library. People screamed, shoving each other toward the exits. A woman in a red dress stumbled past, her face covered in blood. Someone's shoe, just the shoe, expensive and Italian, lay in the middle of the room. Elena's body moved before her brain caught up. She pushed herself off the column, ignoring the sharp pain in her ribs. The ringing in her ears made everything sound underwater, distant and wrong. "Move! Get out!" A man in a tuxedo grabbed her arm, trying to pull her toward the door. She yanked free. "Where's Adrian?" The man didn't answer. He was already gone, swallowed by the crush of bodies flooding the hallway. Elena turned in a circle, scanning the chaos. Guests streamed past her like a river around a stone. She was invisible to them. She always had been. 3 years as Adrian Cade's executive assistant had taught her that being overlooked was a survival skill in a world of giants. But tonight, being invisible might be the only thing that saved him. She found him near the windows. Adrian Cade, the man whose name could move markets and destroy careers, lay motionless beneath a collapsed section of the ceiling. Blood pooled beneath his head. His eyes were closed. One arm was bent at an angle that made Elena's stomach turn. "Adrian!" She dropped to her knees beside him, her hands hovering over his chest. Was he breathing? She couldn't tell. The smoke was getting thicker. A woman's voice cut through the chaos. "Is he dead?" Elena looked up. Vanessa Chen stood 10 feet away, her white engagement gown streaked with ash. Adrian's fiancée, the woman who was supposed to become Mrs. Cade in 3 months. She held her phone in one trembling hand, her other hand pressed against her mouth. "Call 911, Elena said. Vanessa didn't move. She stared at Adrian's motionless body, her eyes wide and glassy. "Is he dead?" she asked again, louder this time. "He's breathing. Call an ambulance." But Vanessa was already backing away. I can't be here. The press will..." Her voice cracked. I'm sorry. Then she turned and ran. Elena watched her disappear into the smoke-filled hallway. Part of her wanted to scream, to chase Vanessa down and drag her back. But there was no time for that. The fire was spreading. She could feel the heat now, intense and wrong. She turned back to Adrian. His face was pale beneath the blood. A gash above his left eye leaked steadily, mixing with the dirt and debris covering his skin. She pressed 2 fingers against his neck, searching for a pulse. There. Faint but steady. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, you're not dying on me." She grabbed his shoulders and pulled. He didn't budge. The ceiling beam across his legs was massive, easily 200 pounds of ornate wood and plaster. She tried again, throwing her whole weight into it. Nothing. The smoke was getting darker. Her lungs burned with every breath. "Come on, Adrian. Work with me here." She wedged her shoulder under the beam and pushed up with her legs. The beam shifted, barely an inch, but enough. She grabbed his arm and pulled again, harder this time. His body moved, 6 inches, then a foot. She reset her position and lifted again. The beam rose. She yanked him free, and the beam crashed back down, sending up a cloud of dust and debris. Elena dragged him toward the door, her arms screaming in protest. He was dead weight, easily twice her size. Her feet slipped on the marble floor. She fell once, caught herself, kept going. The hallway was chaos. People pushed and shoved, ignoring her completely as she struggled to move Adrian's unconscious body. A man stepped on her hand. She bit back a cry and kept pulling. The elevator was packed. The stairs were her only option. She looked at Adrian, then at the stairwell door 20 feet away. No way she could carry him down 43 flights. But the building was on fire, and the elevators would shut down any second. "Hey!" She grabbed a passing man by his jacket. "Help me get him to the stairs." The man looked at Adrian, then at the flames behind them. "Are you crazy? We need to get out of here." "Then help me move him and we can all get out faster." He hesitated for exactly 2 seconds. Then he grabbed Adrian's other arm. Together, they hauled him to the stairwell. The moment they got through the door, the man dropped Adrian's arm and took off down the stairs without a word. Elena let him go. She sat on the landing, breathing hard, and looked at the man whose empire she'd served for 3 years. Adrian Cade, the wolf of New York real estate. The man who'd made billions buying and selling Manhattan like it was a monopoly board. The man who'd never once looked at her like she was anything more than furniture that occasionally brought him coffee. She should leave him, flag down someone in the stairwell, pass off the responsibility, save herself. Instead, she hooked her arms under his shoulders and started dragging him down the stairs. One step at a time. The ambulance arrived 14 minutes after the explosion. Elena knew because she'd been counting. 14 minutes of dragging Adrian's unconscious body down 43 flights of stairs, stopping every 5 floors to check his pulse, to make sure he was still breathing, to ignore the fact that her arms felt like they were being torn from her shoulders. The paramedics found them on the 18th floor. Elena was sitting on the landing, Adrian's head in her lap, pressing her jacket against the gash above his eye. "Ma'am, we need you to step back." She did. Her legs barely held her weight. They loaded Adrian onto a stretcher, moving with practiced efficiency. One paramedic shone a light in his eyes. Another checked his vitals. A third started an IV line. "Are you injured?" A female paramedic approached Elena, shining a flashlight in her face. "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." Elena looked down. Blood soaked her white blouse. Whether Adrian's or her own, she couldn't tell. Her hands were scraped raw. Her right knee throbbed. "I'm fine," she repeated. The paramedic didn't look convinced, but she had other priorities. "Are you family?" "I'm his assistant." "His fiancée?" "No, she left." The paramedic's expression flickered. Surprise, maybe disgust. But she recovered quickly. "We're taking him to Mount Sinai. You should get checked out too." Elena nodded, but she didn't move. She watched them wheel Adrian toward the emergency exit, his face an unnatural shade of gray beneath the oxygen mask. He looked smaller somehow. Vulnerable. Nothing like the man who'd terrorized boardrooms and crushed competitors without blinking. She followed them down the remaining flights and into the street. The scene outside was pandemonium. Fire trucks blocked the avenue. Police barricades held back a growing crowd of reporters and onlookers. The penthouse, the top 3 floors of the building, was engulfed in flames that painted the night sky orange. Elena climbed into the back of the ambulance without being invited. No one stopped her. Bis. Mount Sinai's emergency room smelled like disinfectant and fear. Elena sat in a plastic chair near the nurses' station, watching doctors and nurses rush past. They'd taken Adrian straight to surgery, something about internal bleeding and a possible spinal injury. The words had washed over her in a blur of medical jargon she didn't fully understand. All she knew was that he might die. And if he died, so did everything else. "Miss Voss?" She looked up. A doctor in blue scrubs stood in front of her, his expression carefully neutral. "I'm Dr. Patel. I'm one of the surgeons working on Mr. Cade." Elena stood. "Is he alive?" "Yes, but his condition is critical. The explosion caused significant trauma. Multiple fractured ribs, a punctured lung, severe head trauma, and—" He paused. "His spine was damaged. We won't know the full extent until we can stabilize him, but the preliminary scans show compression at the T12 vertebra." "What does that mean?" Dr. Patel's expression softened slightly. "It means there's a strong possibility he'll be paralyzed from the waist down." The words hit her like a second explosion. She sat back down, hard. "We're doing everything we can," Dr. Patel continued, "but the next 48 hours are critical. Does he have family we should contact?" Elena's mind went blank. Adrian's parents were dead. He had a sister somewhere in Europe. They hadn't spoken in years. His fiancée had run out of a burning building and hadn't looked back. "I'll make the calls," she heard herself say. Dr. Patel nodded. "Someone from patient services will be out soon to collect insurance information. In the meantime, you should let someone look at those hands." He disappeared back through the double doors before Elena could respond. She stared at her scraped, bloody palms. She should feel something: fear, shock, exhaustion. But all she felt was empty. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it from her pocket, somehow still intact despite everything, and saw 47 missed calls. The board of directors, Adrian's lawyer, the PR team, everyone who needed Adrian Cade to be alive and functional because their entire world revolved around him. She ignored them all and dialed the one number that mattered. Richard Zhao answered on the first ring. "Elena, thank God." "Is he alive?" Richard was Adrian's CFO, the closest thing Adrian had to a friend. They'd built Cade Industries together, turning a small real estate portfolio into a multi-billion-dollar empire. "He's in surgery," Elena said. "It's bad, Richard." "How bad?" She told him everything Dr. Patel had said. When she finished, there was a long silence on the other end. "Jesus," Richard finally said. "Vanessa called me. She said—" He stopped. "Never mind what she said. I'm on my way. Don't talk to anyone until I get there. Not the board, not the press, nobody." "Richard, they're saying he might be paralyzed." Another silence, longer this time. "Then we'll deal with it," Richard said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Just hold tight. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up. Elena leaned back in the uncomfortable chair and closed her eyes. Her whole body ached. Her ears still rang from the explosion. She could smell smoke in her hair, taste ash in her mouth. She should go home, shower, sleep. Let the doctors and Richard handle whatever came next. Instead, she stayed. Richard arrived 40 minutes later with Adrian's lawyer, Marcus Webb, in tow. They found Elena in the same chair, still covered in blood and debris. "Christ, Elena." Richard pulled her into a brief, awkward hug. "You look like hell." "Thanks." Marcus, ever the lawyer, cut straight to business. "What do we know about the explosion? Was it an accident or deliberate?" "I don't know. Everything happened so fast." "The news is calling it a gas leak," Richard said. "But Adrian's building is less than 5 years old. Gas leaks don't just happen in buildings like that." "So someone tried to kill him," Elena said flatly. Richard and Marcus exchanged a look. "We don't know that," Marcus said carefully. "But we need to consider all possibilities. Adrian has enemies, a lot of them." Elena laughed, a short, bitter sound. "That's the understatement of the century. Adrian Cade hadn't built his empire by being nice. He'd crushed competitors, destroyed careers, and ruined lives without a second thought. She'd watched him do it, helped him do it, in her own small way by scheduling the meetings where he buried people alive. "The board is going to push for a temporary CEO," Marcus said. "They'll want someone at the helm until Adrian recovers, if he recovers." "David Chen will make a move," Richard said grimly. "He's been waiting for an opportunity like this." David Chen, Vanessa's father, Adrian's future father-in-law and the second largest shareholder in Cade Industries. A man who smiled like a shark and played the long game better than anyone Elena had ever seen. "They can't just push Adrian out," she said. "It's his company." "It's a publicly traded company," Marcus corrected, "and if the CEO is incapacitated, he's not dead. But he might be paralyzed, and even if he survives, the recovery will be long. The board won't wait." Elena stood abruptly. "Then we don't tell them how bad it is. We buy time." Richard raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly do we do that?" "We tell them he's injured but stable, that he's expected to make a full recovery. We keep them away from the hospital, control the information flow." "That's a temporary solution at best," Marcus said. "Eventually they'll demand proof of life, a statement, something." "Then we give them something," Elena said, "but not until Adrian can tell us what he wants to do." If Adrian woke up, if he could still think clearly enough to make decisions, if he wasn't broken beyond repair. There's something else, Richard said quietly. Vanessa released a statement an hour ago. She's calling off the engagement. Of course she was. Elena had watched Vanessa run out of that burning building without a backward glance. Why would she stick around for the aftermath? Let her go, Elena said. Adrian doesn't need her. He needs her father's support on the board, Marcus countered. David Chen controls 15% of the voting shares. If he turns against Adrian, then we find someone else to back him. There are other players. Not many who'll back a paralyzed CEO. The words hung in the air like a curse. Elena wanted to argue, to insist that Adrian was more than his body, that his mind was what made him dangerous. But she knew how the world worked. Weakness was blood in the water. The sharks were already circling. Family of Adrian Cade? They all turned. Dr. Patel stood in the doorway, still in his surgical scrubs. His expression was carefully neutral, the kind of neutral that meant bad news. How is he? Richard asked. Alive. Stable for now. We've repaired the internal bleeding and set his ribs. The head injury was less severe than we initially feared. No skull fracture, minimal brain swelling. And his spine? Elena asked. Dr. Patel's expression tightened. The T12 vertebra suffered significant compression from the impact. We've stabilized the area, but the damage to the spinal cord is extensive. At this point, I can't say whether he'll regain function below the waist. So he's paralyzed, Richard said flatly. Potentially. We won't have a clear picture until the swelling goes down and we can run more comprehensive tests. But I want you to prepare for the possibility that this is permanent. Elena felt something crack inside her chest. Not break, that would come later. Just crack, like ice beginning to thaw. Can we see him? She asked. He's in recovery, still sedated. But once we move him to ICU in a few hours, yes, one visitor at a time. Dr. Patel left them with instructions about paperwork and follow-up appointments that Elena barely heard. Her mind was already racing ahead, calculating what came next. Adrian Cade, paralyzed. The wolves would tear him apart before he ever left the hospital, unless someone stopped them. We need a plan, she said. Marcus and Richard looked at her. The board meets Monday morning, she continued. That gives us 72 hours to figure out how to protect Adrian's position. We need to... Elena, Richard's voice was gentle. This isn't your fight. You're his assistant, not his keeper. You've done more than enough already. She stared at him. Someone has to fight for him. His lawyers will handle it, his advisors. But you... Richard gestured at her blood-stained clothes, her scraped hands. You should go home, rest, process what happened. Maybe he was right. Maybe this wasn't her fight. She was just the assistant, after all. The invisible woman who made sure Adrian's coffee was the right temperature and his meetings ran on time. But she'd also dragged him down 43 flights of stairs when everyone else ran away. She'd stayed when his own fiancé abandoned him. She'd chosen his life over her own safety. That had to mean something. I'm not going anywhere, she said quietly. Richard opened his mouth to argue, but Marcus put a hand on his arm. Let her stay. We'll need all the allies we can get. Elena saw Adrian for the first time at 3:47 a.m. The ICU was quiet, except for the rhythmic beep of monitors and the soft shuffle of nurses making their rounds. She stood in the doorway of his room, afraid to go further. He looked small in the hospital bed. Broken. Tubes ran from his arms. A bandage covered half his head. His face was bruised and swollen, barely recognizable as the man who'd built an empire through sheer force of will. A nurse adjusted one of the monitors. Are you family? Close enough? The nurse gave her a sympathetic smile. 5 minutes. He needs rest. Elena approached the bed slowly. She'd seen Adrian angry, ruthless, cold. She'd never seen him vulnerable. She pulled up a chair and sat. His hand lay on top of the blanket, pale and still. She almost reached for it, then stopped herself. They didn't have that kind of relationship. They barely had a relationship at all outside of work. But she'd saved his life. That had to count for something. I don't know if you can hear me, she said quietly, but I need you to fight. Not for the company or the money or any of that. Just fight because you're Adrian Cade and you don't lose. The monitors beeped steadily. His chest rose and fell with mechanical precision. "They're already moving against you," she continued. "Vanessa's gone. David Chen will make his play at the Monday meeting. The board thinks you're finished." She leaned forward, dropping her voice even lower. "But I'm not going to let them take everything you built. I don't know how yet, but I'll figure it out. You just have to wake up and tell me what you need." His fingers twitched. Elena froze. Had she imagined it? She stared at his hand, barely breathing. Nothing. She sat back, exhaustion crashing over her in waves. When was the last time she'd slept? Eaten? She couldn't remember. "5 minutes are up," the nurse said from the doorway. Elena stood. She looked at Adrian one more time, this man who'd never noticed her, never saw her as anything more than a tool to be used. "Don't you dare die," she whispered. Then she walked out. The sun was rising when Elena finally left the hospital. The city was beginning to wake up, delivery trucks rumbling past, early commuters hurrying toward the subway. The world kept turning, indifferent to the fact that Adrian Cade's empire was crumbling. Her phone buzzed constantly. More calls, more texts, more people who needed Adrian alive and functional. She turned it off. Her apartment was in Queens, a 40-minute subway ride from Manhattan. Small, cheap, nothing like the luxury Adrian took for granted. But it was hers. She barely made it through the door before collapsing on the couch. Sleep claimed her instantly. She dreamed of fire, of Adrian's broken body, of Vanessa running away in her white dress, of being invisible while the world burned. When she woke 6 hours later, her phone was ringing. She'd turned it off. How was it ringing? She fumbled for it, confusion making her clumsy. The screen said, "Richard." "Hello?" "Elena, turn on the news." She reached for the remote, her hands still shaking. The TV flickered to life. Adrian's face filled the screen, an old photo from some charity gala, him in a tuxedo looking cold and powerful. A news anchor spoke over the image. Sources close to the family confirmed that billionaire real estate mogul Adrian Cade remains in critical condition following last night's explosion at his Manhattan penthouse. While the cause of the blast is still under investigation, speculation is growing about the future of Cade Industries, with some analysts suggesting Elena turned up the volume. Romantic drama. Cade's fiancée, Vanessa Chen, released a statement early this morning announcing the termination of their engagement, citing irreconcilable differences. The timing has raised eyebrows, with some critics. The screen switched to footage of the burning building. Then to Vanessa, looking pristine and composed in a black dress, speaking to reporters outside her father's house. "This has been an incredibly difficult time," Vanessa said, her voice trembling just slightly. "Adrian and I both need space to heal and move forward separately. I wish him the very best in his recovery." No mention of leaving him to die. No acknowledgement that she'd run while he bled. Just careful, calculated PR. "She's already rewriting history," Richard said in Elena's ear. "By tomorrow, she'll be the brave fiancé who made a difficult but necessary choice. Adrian will be yesterday's news." Elena's grip tightened on the phone. "What about the board meeting?" "Moved up to tomorrow morning. David Chen called an emergency session. They're going to push for Adrian's removal as CEO. He's been unconscious for less than 24 hours. "They don't care. They smell blood." Elena's mind raced. Can they remove him without his consent? If they can prove he's incapacitated and unable to perform his duties, yes. The bylaws allow for it. Marcus is reviewing our options, but Richard sighed. "It doesn't look good. I'm coming back to the hospital. Elena, you need to rest." "I'm coming back," she repeated, already moving toward the shower. "We have 18 hours to figure out how to save Adrian's company. I'll be there in an hour." She hung up before he could argue. The shower was hot enough to hurt. She scrubbed the smoke and blood from her skin, watching the water run gray at her feet. Her hands were raw, her knees swollen and purple. Her whole body felt like one giant bruise. She got out, got dressed, and headed back to Manhattan. Adrian woke up at 11:32 p.m. Elena was in his room when it happened. She'd been reading him the financial reports, stupid maybe, but she didn't know what else to do. The monitors had been beeping steadily for hours. The nurses came and went. Dr. Patel had stopped by twice to check the numbers. And then Adrian's eyes opened. "Adrian!" Elena leaned forward. "Can you hear me?" His eyes found her face. For a moment there was nothing, no recognition, no response. Then his lips moved. Elena. His voice was rough, barely audible. What happened? There was an explosion at your penthouse during the engagement party. He blinked slowly, processing. Vanessa. Elena hesitated. How did you tell a man his fiancée had abandoned him? She's safe. She got out. Something flickered across Adrian's face. Where is she? Not here. He understood immediately. She could see it in his eyes, the sharp, cold intelligence that made him dangerous, even flat on his back in a hospital bed. How long was I out? Almost 24 hours. What's the damage? He tried to sit up, then gasped. His face went white. Don't move, Elena said sharply. You have broken ribs, a head injury, and… She stopped. How did you tell someone they might never walk again? And what? Adrian's eyes locked on hers. Tell me. Your spine was damaged. The doctors say you might be paralyzed from the waist down. The machines beeped steadily. Adrian stared at the ceiling. Might, he finally said. Not definitely. They won't know for sure until the swelling goes down. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, the board. They'll move against me. They already are. Emergency meeting tomorrow at 9. David Chen is pushing for your removal as CEO. Adrian's jaw tightened. Of course he is. Richard and Marcus are working on a defense, but a paralyzed CEO is a liability. He turned his head to look at her. You pulled me out of the fire. It wasn't a question. Yes. Everyone else ran. Yes. Including Vanessa. Elena nodded. Adrian stared at her for a long moment. She couldn't read his expression. The drugs made his eyes glassy, unfocused. But there was something there, something calculating. I need to think, he said. Come back tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., before the board meeting. Adrian, you need to rest? 7 a.m., Elena. Don't be late. His eyes closed. Within seconds, his breathing evened out into sleep. Elena sat there for another 10 minutes, watching him. Then she gathered her things and headed for the door. In the hallway, she nearly collided with a woman in an expensive suit, dark hair, sharp features, eyes that could cut glass. You're the assistant, the woman said. Not a question. I'm Elena Voss. And you are? Catherine Sterling, Adrian's lawyer. His personal lawyer, not the corporate one. She looked Elena up and down. Richard told me what you did, pulling him out of the fire. I did what anyone would do. No. Catherine's smile was cold. You did what no one else did, including his fiancée. That makes you either very brave or very stupid. I'm not sure yet. Catherine laughed, a short, sharp sound. I like you. That's rare. She pulled out a business card and pressed it into Elena's hand. Call me tomorrow after the board meeting. We should talk. She walked away before Elena could respond. Elena looked at the card. Catherine Sterling, attorney at law. A phone number, nothing else. She slipped it into her pocket and headed home. Tomorrow would change everything. She just didn't know how yet. Elena arrived at Mount Sinai at 6:47 a.m. The hospital was quieter at this hour. Early enough that the day shift hadn't fully started, late enough that the night shift was winding down. She bought coffee from the terrible vending machine on the second floor, one black, no sugar, the way Adrian took it, and headed to ICU. He was awake when she arrived. Sitting up slightly, his face tight with pain. Dr. Patel stood beside the bed, reviewing something on a tablet. Miss Voss? Doctor. Patel nodded at her. Perfect timing. I was just explaining to Mr. Cade that we need to run additional tests this morning. The swelling has decreased enough that we can get a clearer picture of the spinal damage. When will you know? Elena asked. Later today, but I want to prepare you both. The preliminary results suggest the damage is significant. We're looking at a long recovery, possibly permanent paralysis. Adrian's expression didn't change. Thank you, Doctor. Doctor. Patel left them alone. Elena set the coffee on the side table. You probably shouldn't drink that with all the medication. Probably not. Adrian picked it up anyway, taking a careful sip. Tastes like shit. It's hospital vending machine coffee. What did you expect? Something almost like a smile flickered across his face. Then it was gone. replaced by the cold, calculating mask he wore like armor. "The board meeting is in 2 hours," he said. "David Chen will push for my immediate removal. He'll argue that I'm incapacitated, unable to fulfill my duties as CEO. The board will vote. I'll lose." "Not if you fight back." "How exactly do I fight from a hospital bed? I can't even feel my legs, Elena." His voice was flat, emotionless, but she could see the rage underneath, the fear. "You fight the way you always fight. You outmaneuver them. Find leverage. Make them need you more than they want you gone." Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then, "There's only one way to do that. One move that makes me untouchable, even like this." "What?" He looked at her directly. "Marry me." Elena almost dropped her own coffee. "What?" "Marry me. Today, right now, before the board meeting." "Adrian, you're on a lot of drugs." "I'm thinking clearly. Listen." He set down his coffee and leaned forward slightly, wincing at the movement. "David Chen wants me out, but if I have a wife, someone who can speak for me, make decisions on my behalf, someone with legal authority, it changes everything. The board can't push me out as easily. They'd have to go through you. That's insane. It's strategy. David thinks he can swoop in and take control while I'm weak, but if you're my wife, you become an obstacle, a complication. It buys me time to recover, to figure out my next move." "Why me?" Elena demanded. "You could marry anyone, someone with actual power, connections." "You're the one who stayed." Adrian's eyes were hard, clear. "Everyone else ran. My fiancé, my friends, everyone. You stayed. You pulled me out of that fire. That means you're either loyal or crazy, and right now I'll take either one. This is a business transaction to you. Everything is a business transaction. That's how the world works." He paused. "I'm offering you a deal. Marry me. Help me keep my company. In return, I'll make sure you're taken care of, financially, legally, whatever you need." "For how long?" "As long as it takes. Could be 6 months. Could be a year. When this is over, we dissolve the marriage quietly. You walk away with enough money to never worry again." Elena stared at him. Adrian Cade, paralyzed and broken, still playing chess while everyone else barely understood the rules. She should say no. This was crazy. Marrying a man she barely knew. A man who'd never even noticed her before last night. A man whose enemies had just tried to kill him. But she'd dragged him down 43 flights of stairs. She'd sat beside his bed while he fought for his life. She'd watched Vanessa run away and felt something crack inside her chest. Anger, maybe, or disgust at people who only stayed when things were easy. "What happens if you don't recover?" she asked. "If the paralysis is permanent? Then you'll be married to a man who can't walk. But you'll also have more money than you know what to do with and a seat at the table where the real decisions are made." His voice softened slightly. "I won't be easy to deal with, Elena. I'm not a good man. I've destroyed people for less than David Chen is trying to do to me right now. But I keep my word. Marry me, and I'll make sure you never regret it." The machines beeped steadily. Somewhere down the hall, a patient cried out. The hospital kept moving around them, indifferent to the decision being made in this small room. "I need a guarantee," Elena said, "in writing. Legal protection if this goes sideways. Catherine Sterling will draft the agreement. Whatever you want, you'll get. And if I say yes, we do this right now, before the meeting. Right now. There's a hospital chaplain on call. We get the license, sign the papers, make it legal. Then you walk into that boardroom as my wife and tell David Chen to go to hell." Elena looked at the man in the hospital bed. Broken, paralyzed, possibly dying. But still fighting, still refusing to give up. She thought about Vanessa in her white dress, running, about 3 years of being invisible, about the fact that she'd saved this man's life and that had to mean something. "Okay," she said. "I'll do it." Adrian's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. Relief, maybe. Or calculation. With him, it was always hard to tell. "Call Catherine," he said. "Tell her we need her here in an hour, and tell Richard to stall the board meeting as long as possible." Elena pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking. In 60 minutes, she'd be married to one of the most dangerous men in New York. And somehow, That seemed like the least crazy thing that had happened in the last 24 hours. Catherine Sterling arrived at the hospital in 43 minutes, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Elena's rent. She carried a leather briefcase and the kind of confidence that came from never losing. "You're serious about this?" Catherine said, looking between Elena and Adrian. "Completely," Adrian replied. Catherine set her briefcase on the rolling table and pulled out a tablet. "Then we do this properly. Elena, sit. We need to talk terms before you sign anything." Elena sat in the chair beside Adrian's bed. Her heart was racing, but her hands were steady now. Once she made a decision, she committed. That was how she'd survived 3 years working for Adrian Cade. "Standard prenuptial agreement," Catherine said, already typing. "In the event of divorce, you receive a lump sum payment of $5 million plus any property acquired jointly during the marriage." $10 million, Adrian said. Elena's head snapped toward him. "What?" $10 million. She's putting her entire life on hold for this. That's the price. Catherine didn't even blink. $10 million it is. Additionally, Elena will receive full medical coverage under Adrian's insurance, a monthly living allowance of $50,000, and legal immunity from any corporate decisions made during the marriage. "I don't need $50,000 a month," Elena protested. "You're about to become one of the most photographed women in New York," Catherine said. "Trust me, you'll need it. Clothes, security, legal fees when the press tears you apart, which they will." The reality of what she was agreeing to hit Elena like cold water. This wasn't just a legal maneuver. This was stepping into Adrian's world completely. No more invisibility, no more safety in the background. "There's one more thing," Adrian said quietly. "Full power of attorney, medical and financial. If I'm incapacitated, Elena makes the decisions, all of them." Catherine stopped typing. "Adrian, that's non-negotiable. The whole point of this is to keep David Chen from controlling my company while I'm recovering. Elena needs the authority to act on my behalf." "You barely know her." "She saved my life. That's all I need to know." Catherine looked at Elena. "This is a lot of power. Are you prepared for what comes with it?" Elena thought about Vanessa running away, about the board circling like sharks, about Adrian lying broken in a hospital bed, still fighting because that was all he knew how to do. "Yes," she said. "Then let's make it official." Catherine pulled up a document on her tablet. "This is the marriage contract. Read it carefully. If you have questions, ask now. Once you sign, it's binding." Elena read through the legalese slowly. $10 million upon dissolution of marriage. Monthly allowance. Full power of attorney. A clause about public appearances and media obligations. Another about maintaining separate residences if desired. Everything was spelled out in excruciating detail. "What about after?" Elena asked. "When this is over and we divorce, what happens to my reputation?" "There's a non-disparagement clause," Catherine said. "Neither party can speak negatively about the other publicly. Beyond that, your reputation is your own to manage." "Which means it'll be destroyed," Elena said flatly. Adrian shifted in the bed, his face tight with pain. "I can't protect you from public opinion, but I can make sure you never have to worry about money again. That's the trade." It was honest, at least. No promises he couldn't keep. No reassurances that everything would be fine. Just the cold, hard reality of the deal. Elena picked up the stylus. Her hand hovered over the signature line. 3 years ago, she'd come to New York with nothing but a communications degree and desperation. She'd taken a job as Adrian Cade's assistant because it paid well, and she needed to eat. She'd made herself invisible because that was how you survived in his orbit. But she'd stopped being invisible the moment she ran toward that fire, instead of away from it. She signed. Catherine witnessed the signature, then pulled up another document. "Now the marriage license application. We'll need your IDs." 20 minutes later, the paperwork was complete. Catherine made 3 phone calls. One to a hospital administrator, one to someone at City Hall, and one to a chaplain who apparently owed her a favor. "The chaplain will be here in 15 minutes, Catherine said, packing up her briefcase. "The license is being expedited. By 9:30, you'll be legally married." "What about the board meeting?" Elena asked. "Richard's stalling them, but they won't wait much longer. You need to be there by 10 at the latest." Catherine paused at the door. "Elena, are you sure about this?" "Too late to back out now." "It's never too late. Not until you say the words. Elena looked at Adrian. He was watching her with those cold, calculating eyes. This was a transaction to him, a chess move. She knew that. But somewhere underneath the calculation, there was desperation, fear. The terror of a man who'd built everything through control and was suddenly completely powerless. "I'm sure," Elena said. Catherine nodded and left. The room fell quiet. Just the machines beeping and the distant sounds of the hospital. "You can still change your mind," Adrian said. "So can you." "I won't." "Neither will I." He studied her for a long moment. "Why are you doing this? Really, $10 million is a lot of money, but you could have walked away. Let the board tear me apart. Start it over somewhere else." Elena considered lying, giving him some noble answer about loyalty or doing the right thing, but Adrian dealt in truth even when it hurt. "Because I'm tired of being invisible," she said. "I've spent 3 years watching you destroy people who underestimated you. I've seen what you're capable of when you decide to win. And I think if I'm going to stop being invisible, I might as well do it standing next to the most dangerous man in New York." Something flickered across Adrian's face. Not quite a smile, but close. "You might regret that," he said. "Probably. But at least I'll regret it from a penthouse instead of a studio apartment in Queens." This time he did smile. It was small, pained, gone almost immediately. But it was real. The chaplain arrived at 9:17 a.m. He was a small man with kind eyes and a wedding ceremony clearly designed for hospital rooms. Short, simple, no frills. A nurse served as witness. Catherine stood in the corner, her expression unreadable. Elena held Adrian's hand because that's what you did during a wedding, even a fake one. His palm was warm, his grip surprisingly strong despite everything. "Do you, Adrian Cade, take Elena Voss to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "Do you, Elena Voss, take Adrian Cade to be your lawfully wedded husband?" The word stuck in her throat for half a second. Then, "I do. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." No kiss. Adrian was barely sitting upright, held in place by pillows and determination. The chaplain signed the certificate. The nurse signed. Catherine signed. Elena Voss became Elena Cade at 9:23 a.m. on a Saturday morning, wearing yesterday's clothes in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and desperation. "Congratulations," the chaplain said, as if this were a normal wedding. Catherine ushered him out quickly, then turned back to Elena. "You have 30 minutes to get to Cade Industries. The board meeting starts at 10, whether we're ready or not." "I need to change," Elena said, looking down at her wrinkled blouse. "No time. Richard's sending a car. It's waiting downstairs." Catherine pulled a small box from her briefcase and handed it to Elena. "Wedding ring, platinum. Wear it on the left hand." Elena opened the box. The ring was simple, elegant, probably worth more than her car. She slid it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "How did you? I'm very good at my job." Catherine handed her another item, a slim folder. "Corporate power of attorney documents, copies of the marriage certificate. If anyone questions your authority, you show them these. Don't let David Chen intimidate you." "I've worked for Adrian for 3 years. I don't intimidate easily." "David Chen isn't Adrian. He's worse. He smiles while he destroys you." Catherine's expression softened slightly. "But you've got something he doesn't expect. You've got nothing to lose. Use that." Elena took the folder. Her hands were shaking again. "Go," Adrian said from the bed. "Richard will fill you in on the way. Tell David I'm recovering nicely and I'll be back in the office within the month." "That's a lie." "So, he's been lying about me for 20 years. Turnabout is fair play." Elena wanted to say something else, something meaningful or reassuring. But there was no time. Catherine was already holding the door open, waiting. "Don't let them take my company," Adrian said quietly. "I won't." She walked out before she could second-guess herself. The elevator ride down felt surreal. Elena stared at the ring on her finger. Mrs. Elena Cade. It didn't feel real. None of this felt real. Richard was waiting by the car, a black Mercedes with tinted windows. He looked like he hadn't slept in 2 days. "Please tell me this is actually happening," he said as Elena climbed into the back seat. We got married 20 minutes ago. Jesus. Richard slumped in the seat beside her. Do you have any idea what you just signed up for? A $10 million divorce settlement and a monthly allowance that's more than I made in a year. Yeah, I read the contract. I'm not talking about the money. David Chen is going to come after you with everything he has. The press will tear you apart. You'll have death threats by Monday. Then I guess it's a good thing I'm not doing this for the attention. Richard studied her face. Why are you doing this? Because someone has to. The car pulled into traffic. Manhattan streamed past the windows, Saturday morning crowds, tourists with cameras, street vendors setting up their carts. The city didn't care that Elena's entire life had just changed. The board is out for blood, Richard said. David's been working the phones all night, consolidating support. He's got at least 6 votes, maybe 7. We need 9 to block him. Who's on our side? Me, Marcus. Patricia Okonkwo from the pension fund. She's been with Adrian since the beginning. That's 3 for sure. Maybe 4 if we can convince Thomas Warren, but he's a coward. He'll go whichever way looks safest. So we make staying with Adrian look safe. How? The man can't walk. He might never walk again. Half the board thinks he's a liability now. Elena opened the folder Catherine had given her. Marriage certificate, power of attorney, legal documents that made her Adrian Cade's official representative in all matters. Then we show them that Adrian's mind is what made him dangerous, not his legs, she said. And right now his mind is telling them through me that any move against him will be crushed. Richard was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed, tired and slightly hysterical. You sound like him. I've been learning from him for 3 years. About time I put it to use. The Mercedes pulled up in front of Cade Industries headquarters, a sleek glass tower in Midtown that Adrian had built from the ground up. Elena had been here 1,000 times, always through the side entrance, always invisible. Today she walked through the front doors. The lobby was all marble and steel, designed to intimidate. It worked. Elena felt every eye in the room turn toward her as she crossed to the elevators. Whispers followed her. The board meeting was on the 42nd floor, executive level. She'd only been up there twice before, both times to deliver documents Adrian had forgotten. The elevator climbed. Richard stood beside her, straightening his tie nervously. When we go in there, he said, let me do the talking first. I'll introduce you, explain the situation, then you back me up. No. Richard blinked. No? If I let you introduce me, it makes me look weak, like I need permission to be here. Elena watched the floor numbers climb. I walk in first. I tell them who I am and why I'm there. Then you back me up. Elena, these are some of the most powerful people in New York. And I'm married to the man who made half of them rich. That gives me power too. The elevator dinged, 42nd floor. The doors opened onto a reception area where Adrian's executive assistant, former executive assistant, Elena corrected herself, sat behind a massive desk. Miranda looked up, her expression shifting from professional to shocked in half a second. Elena, what are you doing here? Going to a board meeting. But you can't just... Elena walked past without stopping. Richard hurried to keep up. The boardroom doors were solid oak, designed to muffle whatever happened inside. Elena could hear raised voices even through the wood. She pushed the doors open without knocking. 9 people sat around an enormous table. The conversation died the instant she entered. David Chen sat at the head of the table, Adrian's seat. He was a handsome man in his 60s, silver hair perfectly styled, suit perfectly tailored. He smiled when he saw Elena, but his eyes were cold. Miss Voss, this is a closed meeting. It's Mrs. Cade now, Elena said, walking to the empty chair halfway down the table. And since I'm Adrian's wife and hold his power of attorney, I have every right to be here. The room exploded. That's impossible. Since when... David, did you know about this? David Chen held up one hand. The room fell silent instantly. That was power, the ability to quiet a room with a gesture. That's quite a claim, David said smoothly. Do you have proof? Elena set the folder on the table and opened it. She slid the marriage certificate across to him. We were married this morning at Mount Sinai. Hospital chaplain, legal witnesses, completely binding. David picked up the certificate, studied it, set it down carefully. His expression never changed. "How convenient," he said. Adrian gets blown up, his fiancée leaves him, and suddenly his assistant becomes his wife. Forgive me for being suspicious of the timing. The timing is exactly why we did it. Adrian knew you'd make a move against him the second he showed weakness. Adrian is paralyzed. That's not weakness. That's reality. Adrian is recovering. He'll be back in this office within a month. Will he? David leaned back in his chair. Because the doctors I spoke with had a very different prognosis. Elena kept her face neutral, but inside alarm bells rang. David had already gotten to the medical staff. He'd been planning this before Adrian even woke up. "Whatever the doctors told you is privileged information," Richard said, stepping up beside Elena. "You had no right to access it. I have every right to protect this company's interests, and right now, those interests are threatened by a CEO who may never work again." David looked around the table. "Which is why we're voting today on temporary leadership until Adrian is capable of resuming his duties." "You mean voting to replace him permanently?" Elena said. "I mean exactly what I said. Temporary? 6 months, maybe a year. Time for Adrian to recover without the pressure of running a multi-billion-dollar company." It sounded reasonable. That was the trap. David was too smart to push for immediate removal. That would look like a coup. Instead, he'd frame it as concern for Adrian's health. Temporary leadership that would become permanent the moment Adrian showed any continued weakness. "And who would this temporary CEO be?" Elena asked, though she already knew. "The board would vote, but I'd be willing to serve if asked." Of course he would. Elena looked around the table, 9 faces, all watching her, some sympathetic, some calculating, all waiting to see what she'd do. She thought about Adrian in that hospital bed, broken but still fighting, about Vanessa running away, about 3 years of being invisible while powerful people made decisions that affected thousands of lives. "No," she said. David raised an eyebrow. "No? No vote. No temporary CEO. Adrian remains in charge, and I act as his proxy until he's able to return physically." "That's not how this works." "That's exactly how this works. I have full power of attorney. Adrian's authority is my authority." Elena pulled out another document from the folder. This was filed with the corporate office this morning. Legal, binding, and completely within the bylaws. She slid it across the table to David. He read it slowly. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "This is highly irregular," he said. "So is trying to remove a CEO less than 48 hours after he almost died." Someone down the table, Patricia Okonkwo, the pension fund manager, laughed. It was quickly stifled, but the damage was done. The room's energy shifted slightly. "Mrs. Cade," Patricia said, her Nigerian accent crisp and professional. "Can you tell us honestly, what is Adrian's prognosis? Not the spin, not the PR. The truth." Elena met her eyes. Patricia was sharp, fair, and had been with Adrian since he was nobody. She deserved honesty. "The doctors say the spinal damage is severe. He may never walk again. But his mind is completely intact. He's sharp, focused, and already strategizing about the company's future." "A CEO who can't walk? Franklin Roosevelt couldn't walk," Elena interrupted. "Stephen Hawking couldn't walk. Physical disability doesn't equal mental incapacity. Adrian built this company with his mind, not his legs." "That's a lovely speech," David said, "but it doesn't change reality. Adrian needs time to recover. The company needs stable leadership. The solution is obvious." "The solution is that I speak for Adrian until he can speak for himself. That's not temporary leadership, that's continuity." "You're an assistant. You have no experience running a company." "I've spent 3 years watching Adrian run this company. I know every deal, every investor, every vulnerability. I know where the bodies are buried." Elena let that hang in the air for a moment. Literally, in some cases. It was a bluff, mostly, but the flicker of uncertainty in David's eyes told her it landed. "This is absurd," one of the other board members said, Thomas Warren, the coward Richard had mentioned. "We can't let an assistant with a hastily signed marriage certificate make decisions worth billions of dollars." "Then vote me out," Elena said calmly. "Call the vote right now. Remove Adrian from power, install David as CEO. But understand that the second you do, Adrian will fight back with every legal tool at his disposal. And Adrian Cade doesn't lose legal battles. He's paralyzed in a hospital bed. He's married to a woman who pulled him out of a burning building while everyone else ran, including his fiancée, including most of you. Elena looked around the table. The press is going to love that story. Faithful wife saves billionaire husband, only to have his own board betray him while he's recovering. Great optics. The room went very quiet. David Chen smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "You're good," he said. "Adrian trained you well." "He didn't train me for this. I learned by watching." Elena gathered her documents. "So here's what's going to happen. This board will table any vote on leadership changes for 60 days. That gives Adrian time to stabilize and prove he's capable of leading. In return, I'll provide weekly updates on his condition and any major company decisions." "And if we refuse?" David asked. "Then we go to war. Legal, public, messy. Adrian's lawyers versus yours. The press digging into every questionable deal you've ever made. Your daughter's name dragged through the mud because she left her fiancé to die." Elena paused. "How is Vanessa, by the way?" "I heard she released a statement." David's smile vanished. 60 days, Patricia said suddenly. "That's reasonable. I vote to table the leadership discussion for 60 days. "Seconded," Richard said immediately. Thomas Warren shifted uncomfortably. "I think we should at least— 60 days isn't going to hurt anyone," Patricia said firmly. "And if Adrian shows he can't lead after that, we revisit the issue. That's fair." One by one, the other board members nodded. Not enthusiastic support, more like unwillingness to be the first to openly betray Adrian Cade while his wife stood in the room defending him. David watched it happen with the expression of a chess player who just lost a piece he didn't expect to lose. "Fine," he said. 60 days. But I want detailed updates. Financial decisions, client meetings, everything. If Adrian makes one mistake, he won't," Elena said. "We'll see." The meeting dissolved into smaller conversations. Elena stood there, her legs shaking slightly from adrenaline. She'd just gone toe-to-toe with one of the most powerful men in New York and somehow survived. Richard touched her elbow. "We should go." They made it to the elevator before Elena's knees gave out. She leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "That was insane," Richard said. "You know that was insane, right? Did it work?" "For now, but David's not going to let this go. He'll come at you sideways, find ways to undermine you. And 60 days isn't a lot of time." "Then we make it count." The elevator descended. Elena watched the floors tick down. 41, 40, 39. Her phone buzzed, a text from Catherine. "How did it go?" Elena typed back. "We have 60 days." The response came immediately. "Then we better get to work." The Mercedes was still waiting outside. Elena collapsed into the back seat, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. "Take us back to the hospital," Richard told the driver. Elena closed her eyes. The ring on her finger felt heavy, foreign, real in a way nothing else about this morning had felt. She'd just bought Adrian Cade's 60 days. Now she had to figure out what to do with them. When they got back to Mount Sinai, Adrian was awake and sitting up slightly. Dr. Patel had just left. Elena could see him through the window, talking to a nurse. "Well?" Adrian asked the moment she walked in. "We have 60 days. David agreed to table the vote." Adrian's expression didn't change, but something in his shoulders relaxed. "He agreed? Just like that?" "Not just like that. I had to threaten legal war and bad publicity. Patricia Okonkwo backed us up." "Patricia's solid. She'll hold." Adrian looked at Richard. "What about Thomas Warren?" "Nervous but compliant. He won't make a move unless David gives him cover." "Good. That's good." Adrian closed his eyes briefly. 60 days, that's enough time." "Enough time for what?" Elena asked. "To prove I'm not finished. To show the board that I can still run this company from a hospital bed if I have to." He opened his eyes and looked at Elena. "Did David threaten you?" "Not directly, but he will." "I know. That's why you're going to move into my apartment tonight." Elena blinked. "What?" "We're married. It'll look strange if we don't live together. Plus, my building has the best security in Manhattan. If someone tries to get to you, they'll have to go through armed guards first." Someone already tried to kill you once, which is exactly why you need protection. You just made yourself a target, Elena. David won't come at you directly, but his allies will. The press, investigators, anyone he can weaponize. You need to be somewhere safe. It made sense. Elena hated that it made sense. What about my apartment? Keep it if you want, but your primary residence is now the Cade building, penthouse level, or what's left of it after the explosion. Adrian grimaced. We'll need to move you to the backup residence. Same building, 3 floors down. It's already furnished. Of course he had a backup penthouse. I'll need to get my things. Richard will send people. Don't go back to Queens alone. Elena wanted to argue, to say she could take care of herself, but Adrian was right. She'd just painted a target on her back. David Chen played dirty. His enemies had a habit of disappearing or being destroyed so thoroughly they wished they had. Fine, she said, but I'm keeping my apartment. I'm not giving up everything. I'm not asking you to. Just be smart. Use the resources you have now. Richard cleared his throat. I should go. There are about 50 fires to put out after that meeting. Elena, I'll have a team at your place in 2 hours to pack your essentials. Text me your address. He left, already on his phone. Elena sat in the chair beside Adrian's bed. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind exhaustion and a low-grade panic about everything that had just happened. You did well today, Adrian said quietly. I threatened a board member with destroying his daughter's reputation. Vanessa destroyed her own reputation when she ran out of a burning building. You just pointed it out. He shifted, wincing at the movement. David respects strength. You showed him you're not someone he can push around easily. For 60 days. Then what? Then we see if I can walk again, if I can function, if I can prove to the board that this company still needs me. And if you can't? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. The machines beeped steadily. Somewhere down the hall, someone laughed. Then you divorce me, take your $10 million, and start over somewhere far away from this mess, he said finally. But that's not going to happen. You sound very sure. I am. Because the alternative is watching David Chen take everything I built and run it into the ground. And I'd rather die than let that happen. It should have sounded dramatic. Instead, it just sounded tired. Honest. When are they doing the next round of tests? Elena asked. Tomorrow morning. They'll know more about the spinal damage then. Adrian closed his eyes. You should go. Get settled in the new place. Rest. You've had a hell of a day. So have you. I'm used to it. Elena stood, but she didn't leave immediately. She looked at the man in the hospital bed. Her husband now. Legally, if not in any meaningful way. He'd married her to save his company. She'd married him because she was tired of being invisible. They were using each other. Both of them knew it. Somehow, that made it more honest than most marriages. Adrian? He opened his eyes. Thank you for the opportunity, the money, all of it. Thank you for staying when everyone else ran. It wasn't much, but it was real. Elena left before either of them could say anything else that might complicate the very simple transaction they'd just entered into. The backup penthouse was ridiculous. 5,000 square feet of marble and glass overlooking Central Park. 3 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a kitchen that looked like something from a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows that let in so much light Elena had to squint. The moving team Richard sent had already brought her essentials, clothes, laptop, a few books. They looked pathetic in the massive master bedroom, like a child playing house in a mansion. Catherine was waiting in the living room when Elena arrived. Welcome home, she said, gesturing around the space. What do you think? I think I'm going to get lost trying to find the bathroom. You'll adjust. Everyone does. Catherine pulled out her tablet. We need to talk about next steps. The press is already running stories about your marriage. Most of them aren't kind. Let me guess. Gold digger? Social climber? Those are the polite ones. There's also speculation that you orchestrated the explosion to get close to Adrian. Elena laughed, sharp and bitter. That's insane. Doesn't matter. People will believe it anyway, which is why we need to control the narrative. Catherine pulled up a document. I've drafted a statement for you to release. Simple, sympathetic, focused on Adrian's recovery rather than your relationship. Elena read it. Standard PR language about privacy, love, supporting her husband during a difficult time. This makes me sound like a doormat, she said. It makes you sound like a devoted wife. That's what people want to see right now. What if I don't care what people want to see? Catherine looked at her for a long moment. Then you'll make this harder than it needs to be. But if you want my advice, and you should, because I'm very good at this, play the part for now. Let people underestimate you. It makes the eventual reveal more devastating. What reveal? That you're not Adrian's nurse or his trophy wife. That you're the woman who saved his life and now holds the keys to his empire. Catherine smiled. David Chen thinks you're a pawn. Show him you're a queen. Elena looked out the window at Central Park spread out below. From up here, everything looked small, manageable. She knew it was an illusion. Release the statement, she said. But I'm not doing interviews. Not yet. Agreed. We wait until Adrian's strong enough to appear with you, united front. Catherine gathered her things. Get some rest. Tomorrow the real work begins. After Catherine left, Elena wandered through the penthouse. Everything was perfect, expensive, cold. Nothing like the tiny apartment in Queens where she'd lived for 3 years. She missed it already. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You made a mistake today. Elena stared at it. Then another message arrived. Adrian's protection won't last forever. She blocked the number and set the phone down. Her hands were shaking. Welcome to your new life, she thought. Death threats before dinner. She ordered takeout, Thai food from a place that probably cost 3 times what she used to spend, and ate alone at the massive dining table. Then she went to bed in sheets that cost more than her monthly rent used to be, and didn't sleep at all. The death threats started coming in earnest by Monday morning. Elena woke to 47 messages on her phone, half from reporters demanding interviews, half from anonymous accounts telling her to die in various creative ways. She blocked them systematically while drinking coffee that cost more per pound than her old weekly grocery budget. The view from the penthouse was spectacular. Central Park stretched out below, trees still holding on to their late autumn colors. People jogging, tourists taking photos. Life continuing as if Elena's entire world hadn't been ripped apart and reassembled in the span of 72 hours. Her phone rang. Richard. Have you seen the news? He asked without preamble. I've been avoiding it. Stop avoiding it. You need to know what you're dealing with. Elena pulled up the news on her laptop. Her face was everywhere. Grainy photos from the hospital, her walking into Cade Industries on Saturday, old pictures someone had dug up from her college days, back when she was nobody. The headlines were worse than Catherine had warned. Mystery woman marries billionaire after explosion. Adrian Cade's new wife. Gold digger or guardian angel? From assistant to Mrs. Cade, the Cinderella story no one believes. One tabloid had already found her old roommate from college, who'd apparently told them Elena was always ambitious and knew what she wanted. It was meant to sound sinister. Mostly it made Elena sound competent. This is going to get worse before it gets better, Richard said. David's people are feeding stories to the press, painting you as an opportunist who took advantage of Adrian when he was vulnerable. Let them. The board gave us 60 days. I don't care what the tabloids say. You should care. Public opinion matters. If the narrative becomes that you manipulated Adrian, then we change the narrative. How's Adrian? A pause. Not great. Doctor. Patel ran the tests yesterday. The spinal damage is worse than they initially thought. They're talking about surgery, but it's high risk. There's a chance it could make things worse instead of better. Elena set down her coffee. Does Adrian know? He knows. He wants to talk to you about it. Can you get to the hospital by 9? I'll be there. She hung up and stared at her reflection in the window. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair that needed washing. She still looked like an assistant pretending to be something she wasn't. Maybe that's all she'd ever be. She showered, dressed in one of the designer outfits Catherine had sent over, black suit, professional, armor disguised as fashion, and headed to Mount Sinai. The hospital lobby was different this time. People recognized her, whispered as she passed. A security guard stopped her at the elevator. Mrs. Cade, we've been instructed to escort you to the ICU. I know the way. Hospital policy. After the threats. Elena's stomach tightened. What threats? Someone called in a bomb threat this morning, mentioned you by name. It was a hoax, but administration wants to be careful. Perfect. Now she was getting hospital's bomb threats. The guard escorted her to Adrian's room. Dr. Patel was inside, along with another doctor Elena didn't recognize, an older man with steel gray hair and the kind of steady hands that came from years of surgery. Adrian looked worse than he had on Saturday, paler, thinner. The fight in his eyes dimmed slightly by pain and exhaustion. "Elena," he said when she entered. "Good. You should hear this." Dr. Patel gestured to the other doctor. "This is Dr. James Reeves. He's one of the top neurosurgeons in the country. We brought him in to consult on Adrian's case." Dr. Reeves stepped forward. "Mrs. Cade, I've reviewed your husband's scans extensively. The damage to his T12 vertebra is significant. Without intervention, he'll remain paralyzed from the waist down permanently." "And with intervention?" Elena asked. "There's a surgical procedure we can attempt. It involves decompressing the spinal cord and stabilizing the vertebra with titanium rods. If successful, Adrian could regain some function, possibly full function, though that's optimistic. And if it's not successful?" Dr. Reeves' expression was carefully neutral. "There's a 15% chance of complete paralysis extending higher up the spine, possibly to the neck. There's also a risk of infection, blood clots, and in worst-case scenarios, death on the operating table." The room went very quiet. "So I could walk again," Adrian said, "or I could end up completely paralyzed, or dead." "Yes. Those are terrible odds." "They are," Dr. Reeves agreed, "which is why the decision is entirely yours. Some patients choose to adapt to their current condition rather than risk making it worse. Others roll the dice because they can't accept being broken." Adrian looked at Elena. "What do you think?" She blinked. "Me? You're my wife. You have power of attorney. If I'm unconscious on that operating table and something goes wrong, you'll be the one making decisions, so I want to know what you think." Elena looked between the three men. Dr. Patel, sympathetic but professional. Dr. Reeves, detached and clinical. Adrian watching her with those cold, calculating eyes that somehow expected her to have an answer. "I think it's your body and your choice," she said carefully. "That's a politician's answer. I want your actual opinion." "My actual opinion is that I've known you for 3 years and you'll never be satisfied staying in a wheelchair. You'll fight it every single day until it destroys you from the inside out. So if the surgery gives you even a small chance of walking again, you should take it." Adrian smiled slightly. "Even if I die on the table?" "You asked what I think. That's what I think." "Dr. Reeves," Adrian said, still looking at Elena, "schedule the surgery as soon as possible." Dr. Patel stepped forward. "Adrian, you should take some time to consider." "I've considered. How soon can we do this?" Dr. Reeves checked his tablet. "I have an opening Wednesday morning, 3 days from now. That gives us time to run additional tests, stabilize your vitals, prepare for complications." "Wednesday, then." The doctors left to make arrangements. Elena stood by the window, looking out at the city. Her hands were shaking again. "You're scared," Adrian said. "You could die in 3 days. Of course I'm scared." "Why?" "If I die, you get $10 million and your freedom. That's not a bad deal." Elena turned to face him. "Is that really what you think? That I'm just waiting for you to die so I can cash out? Isn't that exactly what this is? A business transaction. You get money. I get someone to fight for me while I'm down." "Yes, but that doesn't mean I want you to die on an operating table." Adrian studied her face. "Why not?" "Because—" Elena stopped. Why not? He was right. His death would solve a lot of problems for her. No more death threats. No more playing wife to a man who barely knew her. Just money and freedom and a chance to start over. But that wasn't what she wanted. "Because you deserve a chance to walk again," she said finally. "And because I made a promise to keep your company safe for 60 days. I can't do that if you're dead. So it's still about the deal." "Everything's about the deal. That's what you taught me." Adrian laughed, a short, pained sound. "Fair enough. Fair. But Elena?" "What?" "If something goes wrong during surgery, if they give you a choice between keeping me alive as a vegetable or letting me go, let me go. I won't live like that. Adrian, promise me. No machines. No prolonged half-life. If my brain is gone, you pull the plug." Elena wanted to argue, to tell him not to think like that, but he was being practical, preparing for the worst because that's what smart people did. "I promise," she said. "Good." He closed his eyes. "Now tell me about the board. What's David been doing?" Elena spent the next hour filling him in on everything: the press coverage, the threats, Richard's assessment of board loyalties. Adrian listened without interrupting, his mind clearly working through scenarios even as his body betrayed him. "David's playing the long game," he said when she finished. "He'll wait until after the surgery. If I survive but don't walk, he'll use that as evidence that I can't lead. If I die, he'll position himself as the stable choice to guide the company through tragedy. And if you walk, then he'll find another angle. David doesn't give up. He just adapts." Elena's phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. "Need you at the office. Investor call in 30 minutes. She showed it to Adrian. "I should go." "Wait, there's something else." Adrian reached for a folder on his bedside table, winced at the movement. Elena grabbed it for him. "This is a list of people you can't trust. Board members who are loyal to David, investors who'll jump ship the moment things look bad, employees who'll leak to the press for the right price." Elena opened the folder. 12 names, each with detailed notes about their weaknesses and motivations. "You made this when?" she asked. "Last night. Couldn't sleep anyway." "You should be resting." "I'll rest when I'm dead, which might be Wednesday, so I'm making the most of it." He looked at her seriously. "Elena, the next 3 days are critical. David will make his move before the surgery. He'll try to force a vote, undermine your authority, anything to take advantage while I'm vulnerable. You can't let him." "I know." "Do you? Because this isn't like running errands or scheduling meetings. This is war. And in war, people get hurt. I pulled you out of a burning building. I think I can handle some corporate politics. Corporate politics is how people die without anyone noticing until it's too late." Adrian's voice was hard. "David Chen has ended careers, ruined lives, destroyed people so thoroughly they disappeared. He smiles while he does it. Don't underestimate him because he's polite." "I won't. And don't trust anyone completely. Not Richard, not Marcus, not even Catherine. Everyone has their own agenda." "Even you?" "Especially me." It should have been cynical. Instead, it was just honest. Elena left with the folder clutched in her hand and a growing sense that she'd jumped into something much deeper and darker than she'd understood. The investor call was a disaster. Elena sat in Adrian's office, her office now, technically, with Richard and Marcus flanking her. On the screen were 6 major investors who collectively controlled 20% of Cade Industries stock. The lead investor, a man named Harrison Webb, didn't bother with pleasantries. "Mrs. Cade, we're concerned about the company's direction given Adrian's condition. We'd like assurances that leadership is stable." "Leadership is stable," Elena said. "Adrian is recovering and maintaining full strategic oversight. I'm handling day-to-day operations under his direction. With all due respect, you're an assistant. No offense, but you're not qualified to run a multi-billion-dollar real estate empire." "With all due respect, Mr. Webb, I've spent 3 years learning from the man who built this empire. I know every asset, every liability, every strategic priority. What I lack in formal experience, I make up for in direct knowledge." "That's not reassuring." "Then perhaps you should ask yourself why you invested in a company so dependent on one man that his temporary absence causes panic. Maybe the problem isn't my qualifications. Maybe it's your due diligence." Richard kicked her under the table. Elena ignored him. Harrison Webb's face reddened. "Are you suggesting we don't know how to invest?" "I'm suggesting that Adrian Cade built something stronger than any one person. The company will survive his recovery because he built it to survive. If you don't believe that, sell your shares. I'm sure someone else will buy them." The silence on the call was deafening. Finally, another investor, a woman named Sarah Chen, no relation to David, spoke up. "Mrs. Cade, what's Adrian's timeline for returning to full capacity?" "He's having surgery Wednesday. If successful, he'll begin rehabilitation immediately. We expect him back in the office within 3 months." "And if the surgery isn't successful?" Elena met Sarah's eyes through the screen. "Then we adapt. Adrian's value isn't in his ability to walk. It's in his ability to think 10 moves ahead of everyone else. That hasn't changed." The call ended 20 minutes later with no concrete commitments either way. The investors would monitor the situation and reassess their positions based on Adrian's recovery, which meant they were hedging their bets. The moment the screen went dark, Richard exploded. What the hell was that? You basically told Harrison Webb to go screw himself. He was being condescending. He's an investor worth $200 million. You smile and take the condescension. I'm not going to grovel. Adrian wouldn't grovel. Adrian could afford not to grovel because he had 20 years of success backing him up. You have 3 days. Richard ran his hand through his hair. Christ, Elena, we're trying to keep this company together, not burn it down. They need to know I'm not a pushover. If I roll over for the first person who questions me, I'll spend the next 60 days getting walked all over. Marcus, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. She's right, Richard. What? Elena's right. Those investors were testing her. If she'd been apologetic or weak, they'd have lost confidence immediately. At least this way they know she'll fight. Fighting isn't the same as being reckless. Sometimes it is. Marcus looked at Elena. But you need to be more strategic about when you fight. Pick your battles. Harrison Webb is an ass, but he's a useful ass. Make him an enemy and we lose access to his network. Elena nodded slowly. I'll apologize. Frame it as stress from Adrian's condition. Good. Send a personal email, not through official channels. Make it human. Marcus gathered his papers. I have another meeting. Richard, walk me out. They left Elena alone in the office. She sat in Adrian's chair, massive, leather, designed to intimidate. It felt ridiculous, like a child playing dress-up in her father's clothes. Her phone buzzed. Another anonymous text. Enjoy Wednesday. Maybe you'll be a widow by dinner. Elena deleted it without responding, but her hands were shaking when she set the phone down. Catherine appeared in the doorway. Bad call? How did you know? Richard looked like he wanted to strangle you. That's usually a sign. Catherine sat across from Elena. What happened? Elena told her about the investor call. Catherine listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. You need media training, she said when Elena finished, before you talk to anyone else important. I'll set it up for tomorrow. I don't have time for media training. You don't have time not to. Right now you're making enemies faster than you can count them. Some of that is inevitable. But some of it is because you don't know how to play the game yet. Adrian said this was war. It is. But war has rules. Break them strategically, not accidentally. Catherine pulled up her tablet. I've been digging into the explosion. The official story is a gas leak, but that's bullshit. The building was inspected 2 months ago. Everything was clean. So someone planted a bomb. Most likely. I have a contact at the fire marshal's office. He's running independent tests on the debris. If there's evidence of accelerants or explosive devices, he'll find it. And if he does, then we have proof someone tried to kill Adrian, which changes everything. The police investigation becomes criminal. The board has to take it seriously. David's position becomes much weaker if it looks like Adrian was targeted. Elena leaned back in the chair. David wouldn't be stupid enough to actually kill Adrian, would he? David? No. But David knows a lot of people who might benefit from Adrian's death. Competitors, enemies, investors who'd profit from market chaos. Catherine's expression was grim. The explosion happened during the engagement party. Maximum witnesses, maximum chaos. Whoever did it wanted it public, to send a message. Or to make it look accidental. Hard to prove murder when there are 300 potential suspects in the room. Elena thought about that night. The explosion, the screaming, Vanessa running away, everyone scattering like rats from a sinking ship. How many people knew about the party? She asked. It was announced publicly 2 weeks in advance. Guest list was published in 3 society magazines. Anyone could have known. So we're looking for someone who had access to the building, knowledge of the party, and a reason to want Adrian dead. That's about half of Manhattan's power structure. Adrian doesn't make friends. He makes competitors and enemies. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. Elena's phone rang. The hospital, she answered immediately. Dr. Patel? Mrs. Cade, Adrian's asking for you. His vitals are stable, but he's agitated. I think you should come. I'm on my way. She grabbed her coat. Catherine stood. I'll drive you. We can talk more in the car. They made it to Mount Sinai in 20 minutes. The guard recognized Elena this time, waved them through without the escort. Adrian was sitting up when they entered, arguing with a nurse about his medication schedule. I don't need sedatives. I need to think clearly. Mr. Cade, you need rest. I'll rest when I'm dead, which might be soon, so let me stay awake while I can. The nurse looked at Elena helplessly. I'll handle it, Elena said. The nurse left, clearly grateful to escape. Catherine waited in the hallway, giving them privacy. You're being difficult, Elena told Adrian. I'm being practical. They want to dope me up so I'm easier to manage, but I can't afford to be foggy right now. He gestured to his laptop on the bedside table. David made a move. Check your email. Elena pulled out her phone. New message from David Chen sent to the entire board. In light of Adrian's upcoming surgery and continued uncertainty about his recovery, I'm calling for an emergency board vote to establish interim leadership protocols. This is not a removal of Adrian as CEO, but rather a practical measure to ensure company stability during his medical treatment. Vote scheduled for Tuesday at 9 a.m. He's moving the timeline up, Elena said. He's not waiting for the 60 days. Of course not. He knows I'm having surgery Wednesday. If the vote happens Tuesday and I'm removed even temporarily, I'll be going into surgery without my position secured. And if something goes wrong during surgery, you come out without a company to return to. Exactly. Adrian's jaw was tight. He's smart. I'll give him that. Can he do this? We had an agreement. The agreement was to table discussion for 60 days. He's not discussing. He's acting. Technically, he's within his rights as a board member to call for a vote on interim protocols. Elena wanted to throw something, preferably at David Chen's smiling face. So what do? We fight. You call every board member personally tonight. Remind them that voting to undermine me 2 days before major surgery makes them look heartless. Apply pressure. Make them uncomfortable. And if that doesn't work? Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then we go nuclear. What does that mean? It means I've been building leverage on David Chen for 10 years. Insurance policies in case he ever came after me directly. I was hoping not to use them, but he pulled a flash drive from the drawer beside his bed. This contains evidence of financial irregularities in David's investment fund. Nothing illegal, but deeply embarrassing. The kind of thing that makes investors nervous and regulators curious. Elena took the flash drive. You've been sitting on this for 10 years? I've been sitting on this because mutually assured destruction works better than actual destruction. David knows I have information on him. I know he has information on me. We stay in balance. But if he pushes this vote through, you destroy him. We destroy him. You're the one who'll have to leak it. I'll be in surgery Wednesday morning. You'll need to make the call. Adrian, if I leak this, there's no going back. David will come after me with everything he has. He's already coming after you. This just gives you a weapon to fight back with. Elena stared at the flash drive. Such a small thing. Barely an ounce of plastic and metal, but it contained enough information to end a man's career. How bad is it? She asked. The information on here. Bad enough that David's investors will pull their money. His fund will collapse. He'll be radioactive in financial circles for years. And Vanessa? She'll be collateral damage, but she made her choice when she ran out of that building. Adrian's voice was hard. I don't feel guilty about this, Elena. David tried to take my company while I'm lying in a hospital bed. He knew the rules when he started playing. This isn't a game. Everything's a game. The only question is whether you're willing to play to win. Elena pocketed the flash drive. I'll make the calls tonight. See if I can stop the vote without using this. And if you can't? Then I guess I'll find out what nuclear looks like. Adrian nodded. Some of the tension left his shoulders. Thank you. For what? For not running when this got complicated. It was complicated the moment I pulled you out of that fire. True. But you could still walk away, take the money, and let the board tear itself apart. Elena looked at him, broken, exhausted, still fighting because surrender wasn't in his vocabulary. I could, she said, but I won't. She spent that night in Adrian's penthouse office making phone calls. 9 board members, 9 different conversations, 9 variations of the same message. Voting to undermine Adrian before his surgery was cruel, unnecessary, and politically stupid. Patricia Okonkwo was the easiest. David's being an ass, she said bluntly. I'll vote against the interim protocols. You have my word. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'm 1 vote. You need 5. 3 board members didn't answer. They'd see her missed calls and know exactly what she wanted. Cowards hedging their bets. Thomas Warren answered, but was predictably spineless. I understand your position, Mrs. Cade, but we need to think about the company's stability. The company's stable. What you're actually thinking about is whether it's safer to back Adrian or David. And you're choosing David because he's conscious and Adrian's in a hospital bed. That's not fair. It's completely fair. You're a coward, Thomas. You always have been. But at least own it. She hung up on him. 2 more board members gave non-committal answers. Maybe yes, maybe no. We'll see how we feel Tuesday morning. That left 1 call. The hardest one. Harrison Webb answered on the 4th ring. Mrs. Cade, I was wondering if I'd hear from you. Mr. Webb, I want to apologize for my tone earlier today. I was stressed about Adrian's condition and took it out on you. That wasn't professional. Apology accepted. But that's not why you're calling. No, I'm calling about David Chen's proposal for interim leadership protocols. I assumed as much. Harrison was quiet for a moment. You want me to vote against it? Yes. Why should I? David makes good points. Adrian's having major surgery in 2 days. The company needs contingency plans. The company has contingency plans. I have power of attorney. If Adrian's incapacitated, I make decisions on his behalf. That's the contingency. With all due respect, and I mean this genuinely, Mrs. Cade, you're untested. You've been Adrian's wife for 3 days. You've run his company for exactly 0 days. That makes investors nervous. Elena thought about the flash drive in her pocket, the nuclear option. Mr. Webb, can I be honest with you? Please. David Chen isn't proposing interim protocols because he's worried about the company. He's proposing them because he wants Adrian's job and sees an opening. If Adrian dies or stays paralyzed, David becomes CEO permanently. That's the play. I know David's ambitious. It's not ambition, it's opportunism. And if you vote for his protocols, you're helping him stage a coup against a man who's about to have life-threatening surgery. That's a harsh interpretation. Is it? Think about the timing. David waits until Adrian's most vulnerable, then calls for a vote the day before surgery. If he really cared about company stability, he'd wait until after we knew the outcome. But he's not waiting because he doesn't want Adrian to have the chance to recover. Harrison was quiet for a long time. You make a compelling argument, he finally said. So you'll vote against the protocols? I'll think about it. That's the best I can offer right now. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. Elena hung up and stared at the ceiling. She'd done what she could, made the calls, applied the pressure, played the game as well as she knew how. Now she just had to wait. Tuesday morning arrived too fast. Elena dressed carefully. Navy suit, simple jewelry, hair pulled back in a way that said serious professional instead of terrified imposter. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. 3 days ago, she was nobody. Now she was about to walk into a boardroom and fight for a company worth billions. The irony wasn't lost on her. Catherine met her in the lobby of Cade Industries. Ready? Catherine asked. No, but I'm going anyway. They rode the elevator in silence. When the doors opened on the 42nd floor, Richard was waiting. 6 votes, he said quietly. David has 6 votes for sure. We have 3. That leaves 3 undecided. Who are the undecideds? Harrison Webb, Thomas Warren, and Linda Zhao. Elena had called all 3 last night. Harrison had been non-committal. Thomas had been spineless. Linda hadn't answered at all. So we need 2 out of 3, Elena said. Yes, and I have no idea which way they'll go. They walked into the boardroom together. David Chen sat at the head of the table again, looking calm and collected. He smiled when Elena entered. Mrs. Cade, good of you to join us. Wouldn't miss it. Elena took her seat. The other board members filed in. Patricia gave her a small nod. Thomas avoided eye contact. Harrison Webb looked thoughtful. David called the meeting to order. Thank you all for coming on short notice. I know we're all concerned about Adrian and wish him the best with his upcoming surgery, but we also have a responsibility to this company and its shareholders, which is why I'm proposing interim leadership protocols during Adrian's recovery. He laid out his plan. Temporary CEO appointed by board vote. 6-month term, renewable if Adrian's condition didn't improve. All major decisions subject to board approval. It sounded reasonable. That was the trap. The interim CEO would essentially be running the company, Richard said. That's not protocols, that's a replacement. A temporary replacement, David corrected smoothly, with full intention of returning power to Adrian when he's able to resume his duties. And who would this interim CEO be? Patricia asked. The board would vote, but I'd be willing to serve if asked. There it was. The real agenda, dressed up as corporate responsibility. Elena stood. I'd like to propose an alternative, she said. David raised an eyebrow. By all means. We wait. Adrian's surgery is tomorrow. In 48 hours, we'll know the outcome. If it's successful and he's on track to recover, this whole discussion is moot. If it's not successful, she paused. Then we revisit the question with full information instead of speculation. That's a delay tactic, one of David's supporters said. It's common sense. We're talking about installing a temporary CEO one day before we'll know if it's even necessary. That's not prudent. That's premature. Adrian could be in recovery for months, David said. The company can't wait months for leadership. The company has leadership, me, acting on Adrian's behalf with his full authority. You're not qualified? I'm as qualified as anyone in this room to speak for Adrian Cade because I'm the only one he trusted enough to marry. Elena let that hang in the air. If you don't trust his judgment, that's a different conversation. But don't pretend this is about qualifications. The room went quiet. Harrison Webb leaned forward. Mrs. Cade, what happens if the surgery goes badly? If Adrian doesn't recover? Elena thought about her promise to Adrian, to let him go if his brain was gone. Then we deal with it, she said, together, as a board. But we don't make that decision before we have to. David, Harrison said, turning to him, what's your rush? Elena makes a fair point. We can wait 48 hours. Every day we wait is another day of uncertainty for investors. The investors will survive 2 more days. I should know. I am one. Harrison looked around the table. I move to table this discussion until Thursday, after Adrian's surgery, when we actually know what we're dealing with. Seconded, Patricia said immediately. David's jaw tightened. This is irresponsible. All in favor? Harrison said. 5 hands went up. Patricia, Richard, Harrison, Linda Zhao, and surprisingly, Thomas Warren. Elena wanted to collapse in relief, but she kept her face neutral. Motion carries, Harrison said. We'll reconvene Thursday at 2 p.m. David's smile never wavered, but his eyes were ice. Of course, he said. Thursday it is. The meeting dissolved. Elena made it to the hallway before her legs started shaking. Richard caught up with her. That was too close. But it worked. For now, Thursday's going to be worse. If Adrian's surgery doesn't go well, then we'll deal with it Thursday. Catherine appeared beside them. You need to see Adrian before the surgery. I'm planning to visit tonight. No, now. Something's wrong. The drive to Mount Sinai took 15 minutes. Elena spent all of them trying not to panic. Dr. Patel met them outside Adrian's room. His expression was grim. What happened? Elena demanded. Adrian's vitals spiked an hour ago. We're not sure why. It could be stress, could be a complication from his injuries. We're running tests. Can I see him? Yes, but he's agitated. Try to keep him calm. Elena pushed into the room. Adrian was sitting up, his face pale and drawn. A nurse was adjusting his IV. Elena, good. Tell them to stop pumping me full of sedatives. Mr. Cade, your blood pressure is dangerously high. Because I'm stressed, not because I'm having a heart attack. Elena, tell them. The nurse looked at Elena pleadingly. Give us a minute, Elena said. The nurse left reluctantly. Elena sat beside the bed. What's going on? David called me. Right before the board meeting. He what? He called my hospital room. Told me he was going to take my company and there was nothing I could do about it. Said Vanessa sends her regards. Adrian's hands were clenched into fists. He's been planning this with her all along. The engagement was a setup. Get close to me, learn my weaknesses, then strike when the moment was right. Adrian, you don't know that. I know David. And I know my vitals spiked right after he called because I wanted to strangle him through the phone and couldn't because I can't even feel my legs. Elena reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. The vote was tabled, she said quietly, until Thursday, after your surgery. Adrian's eyes snapped to hers. How? Harrison Webb moved to table, 5 votes in favor. Some of the tension left Adrian's body. You did it. We did it, but David's not going to stop. I know. Which is why you need the flash drive. If the surgery goes wrong, if I don't make it, promise me you'll use it. Destroy David before he can take everything. Adrian, promise me, Elena. She looked at the man in the hospital bed. Tomorrow he'd be in surgery, fighting for his life, for his ability to walk, for everything he'd built. And she'd be in a waiting room, holding information that could destroy his enemies. I promise, she said. Adrian closed his eyes. Thank you. She sat with him until visiting hours ended, until the nurses made her leave, until she had no choice but to go back to the empty penthouse and wait for morning. Wednesday arrived cold and gray. Elena was at the hospital by 6 a.m., 2 hours before Adrian's surgery. He was already awake, already dressed in a hospital gown, already looking like a man preparing for battle. You didn't have to come this early, he said. Yes, I did, doctor. Reeves arrived at 7 to go over the procedure one last time. Risks, benefits, recovery timeline. All the things they'd already discussed but needed to hear again. Any questions? Dr. Reeves asked. Just one, Adrian said. If this works, how long before I can walk? If everything goes perfectly, you'll start physical therapy in a week. Full recovery could take 6 months to a year. And if it doesn't go perfectly, then we adjust expectations accordingly. It was a careful non-answer, the kind doctors gave when they didn't want to destroy hope but couldn't promise miracles. They wheeled Adrian toward surgery at 8:30. Elena walked beside the gurney as far as they'd let her. At the surgical doors, Adrian grabbed her hand. If something happens, nothing's going to happen. But if it does, use the flash drive. Don't let David win. I won't. And Elena? He looked at her with something that might have been genuine emotion, hard to tell through the fear and medication. Thank you for staying. Then they wheeled him through the doors, and Elena was alone in the hallway with nothing to do but wait. Richard arrived an hour later with coffee and Marcus in tow. Catherine came at noon with updates about the press. Patricia Okonkwo stopped by at 2 to offer support. Everyone waiting to see if Adrian Cade would survive. The surgery was supposed to take 6 hours. It took 9. Elena was pacing the waiting room when Dr. Reeves finally appeared. His scrubs were still on, his face exhausted but unreadable. Mrs. Cade. Elena's heart stopped. Is he alive? He's alive. The surgery was successful. We were able to decompress the spinal cord and stabilize the vertebra. The next 48 hours will be critical, but his vitals are stable. Elena felt her knees buckle. Richard caught her. Can I see him? She asked. He's in recovery, unconscious. But yes, you can see him. They led her to a recovery room. Adrian lay motionless, pale as death, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed. But he was breathing. His chest rose and fell with steady rhythm. Elena sat beside the bed and waited for him to wake up. Outside, the city continued. The board would meet tomorrow. David would make his next move. The war would continue. But for now, Adrian was alive, and that was enough. Adrian woke up screaming. Elena jerked upright in the chair where she'd been dozing. It was 3 a.m, 12 hours post-surgery. The recovery room was dark except for the glow of monitors and the dim hallway light bleeding through the door. Adrian, she reached for his hand, but he was thrashing, fighting against the restraints they'd put on him to keep him from pulling out his IV. Nurses rushed in. One administered something into his line, while another tried to calm him down with a voice designed for soothing panicked patients. Mr. Cade, you're safe. You're in the hospital. The surgery is over. Adrian's eyes found Elena's, wild, terrified. I can't feel my legs. Elena's heart stopped. What? I can't feel anything. Elena, I can't. His breathing was ragged, bordering on hyperventilation. Dr. Reeves appeared in the doorway, already in motion. He checked the monitors, examined Adrian's chart. his face professionally blank. "Mr. Cade, listen to me. You're experiencing post-surgical swelling. This is normal. We discussed this possibility. You said I might walk again. You didn't say I'd wake up completely numb. The swelling around your spinal cord needs time to decrease. Right now, the nerve signals are being compressed. As the swelling goes down over the next few days, sensation should return." "Should," Adrian said bitterly. "Not will. Should. I can't make promises about neurology. Every patient responds differently." Dr. Reeves adjusted something on one of the machines. "But the surgery went well. The decompression was successful. You need to give your body time to heal." "How much time?" "Days, possibly weeks. We'll monitor your progress carefully." Adrian closed his eyes. His jaw was clenched so tight Elena could see the muscle jumping. The nurse had given him something. His breathing was already slowing, the panic fading into chemically induced calm. "Mrs. Cade, you should get some rest," Dr. Reeves said quietly. "He'll sleep for several hours now." "I'm staying." Dr. Reeves didn't argue. He left with the nurses, and Elena was alone with Adrian again. She watched his chest rise and fall, watched the monitors track his vitals. Outside, the city was dark and quiet, suspended in that dead zone between night and morning. Her phone buzzed. A text from Richard. "Board meeting still on for 2 p.m. today. David's already working the phones. How's Adrian?" Elena typed back. "Alive. Unconscious. No sensation in his legs yet." The response came immediately. "Shit. That's not good for Thursday." No, it wasn't. If Adrian couldn't demonstrate recovery, David would use it as ammunition. The temporary CEO protocols would pass. Adrian would wake up from surgery to find his company taken from him. Elena looked at her purse where the flash drive sat in an inside pocket. Insurance. Leverage. The nuclear option. She pulled out her phone and opened the encrypted files Catherine had sent her. Background research on every board member, financial records, personal histories, everything Catherine could dig up in 72 hours. David Chen's file was the thickest. Investments, charitable foundations, family connections. On paper, he was clean, respectable, a pillar of New York's financial community. But Catherine had highlighted 3 transactions from 6 years ago. Large cash movements through shell companies. Nothing technically illegal, but the kind of thing that made regulators ask uncomfortable questions. The flash drive Adrian had given her would connect those transactions to a tax avoidance scheme that skirted the edge of legality. Not enough to prosecute, but enough to destroy his reputation with investors who valued stability above all else. Mutually assured destruction, Adrian had called it. The Cold War between powerful men who knew too much about each other. Elena had 6 hours until the board meeting. 6 hours to decide if she was really willing to detonate a bomb that would hurt not just David, but Vanessa and anyone else who'd invested with him. She closed the files and tried to sleep. Morning arrived too fast and too bright. Elena woke to find Adrian awake and staring at the ceiling. "How long have you been up?" she asked. "An hour, maybe 2, can't tell anymore." He didn't look at her. "I still can't feel my legs." Dr. Reeves said it could take days. I know what he said. I also know what he didn't say. That there's a chance the surgery didn't work. That I might never walk again. Elena sat up, her back protesting from the terrible hospital chair. "You don't know that yet." "I know I have a board meeting in 6 hours, and I can't even sit up without help." "That's what I know." His voice was flat, defeated. It scared Elena more than his anger had. "The meeting's at 2, she said. "I can handle it." "Can you? Because David's not going to stop. He smells blood, and right now I'm bleeding out in a hospital bed while he circles." "Then I'll use the flash drive." Adrian finally looked at her. "You said you'd try to avoid it." "I tried. But if David pushes the vote through today, we're out of options. So I'll leak the information, tank his reputation, make him toxic, and destroy any chance of negotiating with him in the future. Once you go nuclear, there's no walking it back." "I know." Adrian studied her face. "You've changed." "What?" 5 days ago, you were invisible. Now you're talking about destroying one of the most powerful men in New York without blinking. That's not the woman who used to bring me coffee." Elena thought about that. About the assistant who'd spent 3 years being overlooked. About running into a burning building while everyone else ran away. About signing a marriage license and walking into a boardroom and fighting for something that wasn't even hers. Maybe I was always this person, she said. I just needed a reason to stop hiding. Adrian was quiet for a moment, then, after this is over, after we know if I can walk, if the company survives, if any of this was worth it, what are you going to do? I don't know. Take my $10 million and disappear, I guess. Isn't that the deal? That was the deal, but deals change, people change. He paused. You could stay, not as my assistant, as a real partner in the company, someone with actual power and authority. Elena stared at him. Why would you offer that? Because you've earned it. Because you're better at this than I expected. Because he stopped, seeming to wrestle with something. Because I trust you, and I don't trust many people. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt complicated, messy, like everything else about this arrangement. Let's survive the next 24 hours first, Elena said. Then we can talk about the future. Dr. Reeves arrived at 9 for morning round. He tested Adrian's reflexes, checked his incisions, asked questions about pain levels and sensation. Any improvement? Adrian asked. Some. Your upper body reflexes are strong. That's good. The numbness in your legs is still present, but that's expected at this stage. When will I know if the surgery worked? We'll have a better picture in 72 hours. The swelling should decrease significantly by then. 72 hours, that's 3 days. Yes. The board meeting is today. Dr. Reeves's expression softened slightly. I understand you're under pressure, but your body needs time to heal. Pushing yourself too hard too soon could cause permanent damage. After he left, Adrian turned to Elena. I need to be at that meeting. You can't. You just had major spinal surgery. I can do it remotely, video conference, show them I'm conscious and capable of making decisions. Adrian, you look like you've been hit by a truck. I look like someone who survived an explosion and major surgery. That's not weakness, that's strength. His voice was hard again, the defeat from earlier buried under layers of determination. David's banking on me being absent, on you being alone in that boardroom. If I show up, even just on screen, it changes the dynamic. Elena considered it. Adrian was right about one thing. David expected him to be out of commission. Seeing Adrian conscious and fighting would throw him off balance. I'll talk to Dr. Reeves, she said. See if he'll allow it. Dr. Reeves said no. Then Elena explained about the board meeting, the hostile takeover attempt, the fact that Adrian's entire life's work was on the line. Dr. Reeves sighed and said yes, but only for 30 minutes, and only if Adrian remained in bed with full monitoring. Catherine arrived at noon with Elena's laptop and a portable camera setup. This is insane, she said, configuring the equipment. He should be resting. No, tell him that. I did. He told me to mind my own business. Catherine adjusted the camera angle. How are you holding up? I haven't slept more than 3 hours at a time since Saturday. I've gotten death threats, marriage proposals from strangers who think I'm a gold digger, and approximately 600 interview requests. How do you think I'm holding up? Better than I expected, honestly. Catherine pulled up the video conferencing software. The fire marshal's report came back. Preliminary findings suggest an accelerant was used. They're officially calling it arson. Elena felt ice in her stomach. Someone really did try to kill him. Yes, the police are opening a criminal investigation, which means reporters are going to be crawling all over this story. You need to prepare for that. Can we use it? The arson finding, to show the board that Adrian's a victim, not a liability. Maybe, but it also makes him a target. Some board members might see that as a reason to distance themselves. Catherine finished the setup. There, you'll be able to patch Adrian in whenever you're ready. Richard arrived at 1:30 to escort Elena to Cade Industries. In the car, he briefed her on what to expect. David's got 7 votes locked. We have 3, me, Patricia, and Marcus just confirmed he's with us. That leaves 2 undecided. Harrison Webb, and who else? Linda Zhao. She's been quiet, but her investment fund has been losing money. She might vote for stability over loyalty. So we need both of them. Yes. And I have no idea which way they'll go. The boardroom was already full when Elena arrived. David sat at the head of the table again, looking calm and confident. He smiled when he saw her. Mrs. Cade, I heard about Adrian's surgery. How is he recovering? He's stable. Thank you for asking. I'm glad, though I'm surprised he's not here. Even remotely, one might think he's too incapacitated to participate. There was the angle. Adrian was too weak to lead, therefore temporary measures were necessary. Elena set up her laptop at the opposite end of the table from David. Adrian will be joining us shortly. He wanted to give everyone an update directly. David's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. How thoughtful. The other board members took their seats. Patricia gave Elena a small nod of support. Thomas Warren looked nervous. Harrison Webb was unreadable. At exactly 2 p.m., David called the meeting to order. Thank you all for coming. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that this is a difficult time for Adrian, and we all wish him a speedy recovery. However, we also have a fiduciary duty to this company's shareholders. Which brings us to today's discussion, interim leadership protocols during Adrian's medical leave. Before we get into that, Elena interrupted, Adrian would like to address the board. She opened the video connection. Adrian's face appeared on screen, pale and drawn, but conscious and focused. Several board members leaned forward in surprise. Gentlemen, ladies, Adrian's voice was rough but steady. Thank you for your concern about my health. As you can see, I'm alive and my mind is functioning just fine, which means there's no need for interim leadership protocols. Adrian, David said smoothly, no one's questioning your mental capacity, but you're recovering from major surgery. The company needs full-time leadership, not someone who's divided between running a business and healing from trauma. I've been running this company from hospital beds, vacation homes, and the back of cars for 20 years. Location doesn't matter. Results do. With respect, you were healthy during those times. Now you're paralyzed. You can say it, David. I'm paralyzed. Possibly permanently. But my legs didn't build Cade Industries. My mind did. And my mind is sharp enough to know exactly what you're trying to do here. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. I'm trying to protect this company, David said, his smile never wavering. You're trying to take it. There's a difference. Adrian leaned forward slightly, wincing at the movement. But here's what you don't seem to understand. I didn't build this empire by being easy to push around. I built it by being smarter, meaner, and more ruthless than anyone else in the room. That hasn't changed just because I can't walk. Adrian, I think you're being... Let me finish. You want to install yourself as temporary CEO? Fine, call the vote. But understand that if you do, I will make it my life's mission to destroy you. I will dig into every questionable deal you've ever made, every corner you've cut, every line you've crossed, and I will burn your reputation to the ground. Elena watched David's face. The smile was still there, but his eyes had gone cold. Is that a threat? David asked. It's a promise. You know I have the resources. You know I have the information. The only question is whether you're stupid enough to push me into using it. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't how civilized people conducted business. This was war, naked and brutal. Harrison Webb cleared his throat. Adrian, perhaps we could discuss a compromise. There is no compromise. Either you trust me to lead this company or you don't. If you don't, vote me out right now and deal with the consequences. But don't hide behind interim protocols and temporary measures. Have the courage to actually do what you're planning. The room was silent. Elena watched the board members' faces. They were uncomfortable, uncertain. Adrian had just called their bluff. Vote him out completely or leave him alone. No middle ground. I propose we table this discussion, Patricia said suddenly. Adrian's just had major surgery. We don't know his prognosis yet. Making any decisions now is premature. We already tabled it once, David said. How long are we supposed to wait? Until we have actual information instead of speculation. The doctor said they'd know more in 72 hours. We can reconvene Monday morning with a clearer picture. And if the picture isn't clear by then we make a decision based on facts instead of fear. Patricia looked around the table. All in favor of tabling until Monday? 4 hands went up. Patricia, Richard, Marcus, and Elena held her breath. Harrison Webb. All opposed? 6 hands, David in his block. A tie. Linda Zhao, who hadn't said a word the entire meeting, finally spoke. I have a question for Mrs. Cade. Elena turned to her. Yes? If we table this until Monday and Adrian's condition hasn't improved, what happens then? Then we have an honest conversation about the company's needs and Adrian's capabilities. But we have that conversation with full information, not half-truths and speculation. Linda was quiet for a long moment. Then she raised her hand. I vote to table. 5-6. The motion passed. David's smile finally cracked. This is a mistake. Maybe, Linda said. But it's a mistake we can correct on Monday if needed. Rushing into a decision today helps no one. The meeting dissolved into smaller conversations. Elena closed the laptop, cutting Adrian's connection. Her hands were shaking. Richard appeared beside her. We bought more time, but barely. Monday, that's 4 days. Will Adrian show enough improvement by then? I don't know, but we better hope so, because we're out of delays after this. Elena gathered her things and headed back to the hospital. In the car, she pulled out the flash drive. She'd been ready to use it, ready to go nuclear and destroy David Chen's reputation. But Adrian had done it himself, threatened David directly, dared him to push harder, forced the board to see the cost of betraying him. It was reckless, dangerous, exactly the kind of move that could backfire spectacularly. But it had worked. When Elena got back to Adrian's room, he was asleep. The exertion from this video call had drained him completely. Dr. Reeves stood by the monitors, making notes. How is he? Elena asked quietly. Exhausted. His blood pressure spiked during the call. I told you this was a bad idea. He insisted. He's stubborn. That's not the same as being right. Dr. Reeves turned to face her. Mrs. Cade, I need you to understand something. Your husband just had major spinal surgery. His body needs rest to heal. Every time he pushes himself like this, he risks complications, infection, blood clots, permanent nerve damage. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're enabling him to destroy himself for the sake of his company. The accusation stung because it was partly true. What am I supposed to do? Elena asked. Tell him to give up? To let David Chen take everything he built while he lies here helpless? I'm saying there are worse things than losing a company, like losing your life or your ability to ever recover. Dr. Reeves's expression softened slightly. I've seen this before. Driven people who can't accept limitations. They push and push until their bodies break completely. Don't let Adrian become one of them. He left Elena alone with her guilt and the sleeping man who just threatened to destroy his enemies from a hospital bed. She sat in the chair and watched Adrian sleep. His face was peaceful for once, the pain lines smoothed away by medication and exhaustion. Her phone buzzed. Catherine. Did you hear? Catherine said without preamble. Hear what? The police arrested someone in connection with the explosion, a former contractor who worked on Adrian's building. They found evidence he was paid to plant the device. Elena's blood went cold. Who paid him? He's not talking, but his bank records show a deposit of $50,000 2 days before the explosion. The money was wired from a shell company in the Cayman Islands. Can they trace it? Maybe. The FBI's involved now since it crosses international lines, but shell companies are designed to hide ownership. It could take months to unravel. Or it could be David. Or it could be any of Adrian's 100 other enemies. The contractor did work for 3 different real estate developers, including 2 of Adrian's biggest competitors. Elena felt a headache building behind her eyes. So we still don't know who tried to kill him. No, but at least we know it was deliberate. That might help with the board. Shows Adrian's a victim, not a risk. After Catherine hung up, Elena sat in the dark room trying to process everything. Someone had paid to have Adrian killed. The explosion wasn't random. It was calculated, planned. Someone wanted him dead badly enough to hire professionals, and that someone was still out there. She must have dozed off because she woke to Adrian's voice. Elena? She jerked upright. What? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. He paused. I can feel my toes. Elena's heart stopped. What? My toes. I can feel them. Not much, just tingling, but it's something. She reached for the call button, but Adrian caught her hand. Wait, before you get the doctors, I need to tell you something. Adrian, if you're regaining sensation, it might be nothing. It might be phantom signals. I don't want to get anyone's hopes up, including my own. He took a breath. But if it's real, if I actually can walk again, I meant what I said earlier about you staying, being a real partner in the company. We can talk about this later. No, we talk about it now. Because in a few minutes, doctors will be in here running tests, and then Monday will come, and the board will vote, and everything will get complicated again. So I'm saying it now while I can think clearly. Elena sat back down. Okay, I'm listening. You saved my life. You fought for my company when you had no reason to. You stood up to David Chen and the entire board and made them respect you. That's not luck. That's skill. Instinct, the same instincts that made me successful. Adrian, let me finish. I've spent 20 years building Cade Industries, but I've been alone the whole time, no real partners, no one I could trust completely. Everyone's always had an angle, an agenda. Even Vanessa, especially Vanessa, was using me to get ahead. And you think I'm different? I think you ran into a burning building when everyone else ran away. I think you married me to save my company, not to steal it. And I think if you wanted to destroy me, you've had a dozen chances already. It was the closest thing to trust Elena had ever heard from him. What exactly are you offering? She asked. After the divorce. After we settle this mess with David and figure out who tried to kill me and I finish recovery, I want you to stay. As COO, real authority, real equity stake, real power. Not as my assistant. As my partner. Why as? Because I'm tired of fighting alone, and because you're better at this than either of us expected. Elena thought about her tiny apartment in Queens, about 3 years of being invisible, about the $10 million she'd been promised in the divorce. I'll think about it, she said. That's all I ask. She pressed the call button. Within minutes, Dr. Reeves and 2 other doctors were in the room, running tests on Adrian's legs, checking reflexes, measuring sensation, asking him to describe what he felt. It's encouraging, Dr. Reeves said finally. The fact that you're regaining any sensation this quickly suggests the decompression was successful. But it's still very early. Don't read too much into it yet. But it's progress, Adrian said. It's progress. Yes. After the doctors left, Elena sat by the window watching the city lights. Her phone showed dozens of missed calls and messages. The press was going crazy over the arson arrest. The board was fracturing. David was probably plotting his next move, but Adrian could feel his toes. It was something. The next 3 days passed in a blur of hospital visits, media statements, and increasingly frantic calls from Richard about board members changing their positions. Adrian's sensation continued improving, first his toes, then his feet, then his calves. By Saturday, he could move his legs slightly, though the movements were weak and uncoordinated. Dr. Reeves remained cautiously optimistic. The swelling was decreasing faster than expected. The nerve signals were transmitting. There was real reason to hope Adrian might walk again. But walking and recovering enough to lead a company were different things. Sunday evening, Catherine called with news. The FBI traced the shell company. It's owned by another shell company, which is owned by a trust in Luxembourg. But they found something interesting. The same trust made a payment to Vanessa Chen's personal account 3 months ago. $50,000. Elena felt her world tilt. Vanessa was involved? We don't know for sure. It could be coincidental. Her father has business dealings all over the world, but the timing is suspicious. $50,000 3 months ago. $50,000 to the contractor 2 days before the explosion. Does David know? If he does, he's not showing it. But Elena, if Vanessa was involved, if she helped plan the explosion that nearly killed her own fiancé, then she and David tried to murder Adrian to take his company. It was one thing to suspect it, another to have evidence suggesting it was true. What do we do? Elena asked. Nothing yet. The FBI is still investigating, but I wanted you to know before the board meeting tomorrow. In case David makes a move, you'll understand what you're really dealing with. Monday morning arrived gray and cold. Elena dressed in her armor again, black suit, simple jewelry, hair pulled back. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw someone different than the woman who'd run into a burning building 10 days ago. Someone harder, sharper, capable of things she hadn't known she could do. Adrian was sitting up when she arrived at the hospital, actually sitting up with minimal help from the raised bed. His legs were still weak, but he could move them, could feel them. How do I look? He asked. Like someone who just had major spinal surgery. So terrible. Terrible but alive. That's what matters. Dr. Reeves had agreed to let Adrian attend the board meeting remotely again, with the same restrictions as before. 30 minutes maximum. Full monitoring. Any sign of distress and they'd cut the connection. Elena set up the laptop while Adrian practiced moving his legs. The movements were small, uncoordinated, but they were there. Even if they vote to remove me, Adrian said, I want them to see this. I want them to know I'm fighting back. They're not going to remove you. You don't know that. No, but I believe it. The car service picked Elena up at noon. Richard was already in the back seat, looking like he hadn't slept in days. 7 votes for David, he said. I've confirmed it. Marcus is with us. Patricia is with us. That's 3. And the other 2? Harrison Webb is leaning our way, but he won't commit until he sees Adrian. Linda Zhao is still undecided. So we need both of them. Yes. Elena thought about the flash drive in her purse, about the nuclear option she'd been carrying for a week, about Vanessa's suspicious payment and David's ruthless ambition. If we lose this vote, she said quietly, I'm using the flash drive. I'm going to destroy David Chen completely. Richard looked at her. Are you sure? No, but I'll do it anyway. The boardroom was tense when they arrived. David sat at the head of the table, flanked by his supporters. Patricia and Marcus sat on the opposite side. The undecided members sat in the middle, literal fence-sitters. Elena set up her laptop. At exactly 2 p.m., she opened the connection to Adrian. He appeared on screen, and several people gasped quietly. He looked terrible, pale, gaunt, clearly in pain, but he was sitting up, and his hands were steady. Good afternoon, Adrian said. Before we begin, I want to show you something. On screen, he moved his right leg, just a few inches. A small, jerky movement, but unmistakable. As of Saturday, I've been regaining motor function. The surgery was successful. Dr. Reeves believes I'll be walking with assistance within 2 weeks. Full recovery projected for 6 months. The room was silent. I'm not asking for sympathy, Adrian continued. I'm telling you facts. I'm recovering, I'm functional, and I'm still the best person to lead this company. So if you want to vote me out, do it. But do it knowing that you're removing a CEO who's fighting his way back, not one who's given up. David leaned forward. Adrian, that's impressive progress. Genuinely. But recovery doesn't happen overnight. You'll be in rehabilitation for months. Physical therapy, pain management, learning to walk again. You can't run a company through all of that. Why not? I built this company while working 80-hour weeks. I ran it through my father's death, through the 2008 financial crisis, through 3 separate hostile takeover attempts. Physical therapy is nothing compared to that. It's not just about your capability, it's about perception. Investors need confidence, clients need stability. Right now, you represent uncertainty. I represent resilience. I represent someone who survived an assassination attempt and came back fighting. Adrian paused. Or did you think I didn't know about the arrest? About the contractor who was paid to plant that bomb? The FBI is tracing the money, David. They're going to find out who paid for it. And when they do, that person is going to prison for attempted murder. Elena watched David's face carefully. Was that fear flickering in his eyes, or just surprise? I hope they catch whoever's responsible, David said smoothly. But until then, we have a company to run. And I'm calling for a vote on interim leadership. All in favor? 6 hands went up. David and his block as expected. All opposed? Patricia, Marcus, Richard. 3. That left Harrison Webb and Linda Zhao. Harrison spoke first. I've been thinking about this all weekend, and I keep coming back to one question. What kind of precedent do we set if we remove a CEO for being injured in a criminal attack? It sends a message that vulnerability equals liability. I don't want to be part of a board that operates that way. He raised his hand. Opposed. 4-6. Everyone looked at Linda Zhao. She sat very still, her expression unreadable. Then she turned to Elena. Mrs. Cade, I have a question. Yes? If we keep Adrian as CEO and he can't perform his duties, what's your plan? Be specific. Elena took a breath. This was it, the moment everything came down to. For the next 6 weeks, I act as his proxy with full authority. Major strategic decisions are made jointly. Day-to-day operations run through me. After 6 weeks, we reassess based on Adrian's progress. If he's walking and functional, he resumes full duties. If not, we discuss alternatives. But we do it as partners working toward the same goal, not as adversaries trying to take power. And what's to stop you from making decisions that benefit you instead of the company? Nothing. Except that I have no reason to sabotage the company that's making me wealthy. My success is tied directly to Cade Industries' success. If it fails, I lose everything. Linda considered this. And if Adrian doesn't recover, if 6 weeks from now he still can't walk, then we'll need to have a harder conversation, but we'll have it with 6 weeks of actual data instead of speculation based on fear. Linda was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at Adrian on the screen. "Can you stand?" she asked. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Not yet. But you're trying? Every day?" That's all I needed to know. Linda raised her hand. Opposed. 5-6. The motion failed. David's face went carefully blank. "This is a mistake." "Maybe," Linda said, "but it's our mistake to make." The meeting ended in uncomfortable silence. Elena closed the laptop, cutting Adrian's connection. Her whole body was shaking. They'd won. Barely. By the thinnest possible margin. But they'd won. Richard grabbed her arm. "We need to leave. Now. Before David can corner anyone and change their minds." They made it to the elevator before Elena's knees gave out. Richard caught her, held her up until the doors closed and they were safely descending. 6 weeks, Richard said. That's all we bought. If Adrian doesn't show significant improvement by then, he will. You don't know that. I have to believe it, because the alternative is unthinkable. When Elena got back to the hospital, Adrian was asleep again. The effort of the video call had exhausted him completely. Dr. Reeves was checking his vitals. How did it go? We won, for now. Good, because he needs to focus on recovery, not corporate warfare. Dr. Reeves made a note on Adrian's chart. His progress is remarkable, but it's fragile. Too much stress could cause setbacks. I'll try to minimize the stress. See that you do. Because next time I won't allow him to participate in any meetings. Medical orders. Elena sat beside Adrian's bed and watched him sleep. His face was peaceful. The pain lines smoothed away. Her phone buzzed. Catherine. FBI just called. They've identified the person who owns the Luxembourg Trust. Elena's heart started pounding. Who? David Chen. The world stopped. Are you sure? Positive. The trust was set up 20 years ago as part of his estate planning. He's the sole beneficiary. So David paid Vanessa, and Vanessa's money went to the contractor who tried to kill Adrian. That's what it looks like. The FBI is bringing them both in for questioning tomorrow. Elena felt something cold settle in her chest. David Chen had tried to murder Adrian, had planted a bomb at an engagement party, had nearly killed 300 people just to get rid of one man who stood in his way. What happens now? Elena asked. Now David Chen goes to prison, and you and Adrian get to watch him burn. Elena hung up and looked at Adrian sleeping peacefully. They'd won the battle. The board vote was over. Adrian was recovering, but the war was far from finished. The FBI arrived at David Chen's office at 6:30 the next morning. Elena watched the news coverage from Adrian's hospital room, her coffee gone cold in her hands. Cameras captured federal agents walking David out in handcuffs, his expensive suit looking suddenly cheap under the harsh morning light. His lawyer was already there, shouting about wrongful arrest and overreach. But David's face told the real story. He looked like a man who'd finally been caught. Vanessa was arrested 2 hours later at her father's house in the Hamptons. The footage showed her in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, looking nothing like the polished socialite who'd run from a burning building. She didn't fight, didn't protest, just walked to the FBI vehicle with her head down and her hands cuffed behind her back. Turn it off, Adrian said from the bed. Elena muted the television. You don't want to see this? I've seen enough. David's finished, Vanessa's finished. The rest is just theater. But his voice was tight, strained. Whatever he was feeling about his ex-fiancée being arrested for trying to murder him, he was keeping it locked down tight. Dr. Patel arrived for morning rounds with Dr. Reeves in tow. They spent 20 minutes examining Adrian's legs, testing reflexes, measuring the strength of his movements. "The improvement is significant," Dr. Reeves said finally. "You're recovering faster than I expected. If this continues, we can start physical therapy tomorrow. Real therapy, not just the exercises we've been doing in bed." "Can I stand?" Adrian asked. "Not yet. Your muscles have atrophied significantly. We need to rebuild strength gradually or risk injury." "How gradually?" "Days? Possibly weeks?" "Patience, Adrian. You're doing well, but pushing too hard could set you back." After the doctors left, Adrian stared at the ceiling in silence. Elena knew that look. He was calculating, planning, already 10 steps ahead of everyone else. "The board's going to fracture," he said finally. David was the center of the opposition. With him gone, his bloc loses cohesion. Some will come crawling back. Others will try to position themselves as the new opposition leader. Let them try. You have 6 weeks to recover. We'll deal with them when the time comes. 6 weeks isn't enough. Not if I can't walk into that boardroom and show them I'm whole again. "You don't need to be whole. You just need to be functional." Adrian turned to look at her. "Is that what you think? That functional is enough?" "I think you're alive when you should be dead. I think you're moving your legs when doctors said you might never feel them again. Yes, functional is enough. It's everything." He was quiet for a moment, then, "The police want to interview me about David and Vanessa. They're coming this afternoon." "Do you want Catherine here?" "Yes, and I want you there too." "Adrian, I'm not your lawyer. You're my wife. You were there the night of the explosion. Your testimony matters as much as mine." The word wife still felt strange. They'd been married for 12 days. 12 days of chaos in hospitals and corporate warfare. Not exactly a traditional honeymoon. The detectives arrived at 2 p.m. A man and a woman, both in their 40s, both with the kind of tired eyes that came from seeing too much darkness. Catherine met them in the hallway and established ground rules. Adrian would answer questions, but briefly. He was still recovering from surgery. Any sign of fatigue and the interview ended. Detective Martinez, the woman, took the lead. "Mr. Cade, can you walk us through the events of the engagement party, starting from when you arrived?" Adrian recounted the evening with clinical precision. The guests, the toasts, the exact moment the explosion happened. He'd been near the library talking to a group of investors. Vanessa had been across the room. The blast had thrown him into the ceiling beam that crushed his spine. "And Mrs. Cade," Martinez turned to Elena. "You pulled Mr. Cade from the debris?" "Yes." "Why?" Elena blinked. "Why did I save him?" "Everyone else was evacuating, including Miss Chen, your husband's fiancée at the time. But you stayed. Why?" "Because he would have died if I didn't." "That's not an answer. People make choices in crisis situations based on instinct and self-preservation. You chose to risk your life for your employer. That's unusual." Elena felt the detective's eyes on her, sharp and assessing. "I don't know what you want me to say. I saw someone who needed help, and I helped him. Even though helping him put you in danger." "Yes," Martinez made a note. "Ms. Chen's lawyers are claiming she was in shock, that she didn't abandon Mr. Cade intentionally, she was simply traumatized and fleeing danger." "Do you recall her state of mind when you saw her?" Elena remembered Vanessa in her white dress, asking if Adrian was dead, then running without looking back. "She seemed scared, but coherent. She asked if Adrian was alive. I told her to call 911, and she left." "Did she attempt to help before leaving?" "No." More notes. Martinez turned back to Adrian. "Mr. Cade, did you have any indication that Ms. Chen or her father wanted to harm you?" "David wanted my company. He'd been positioning himself for a takeover for months. But murder?" Adrian paused. "I thought we understood each other, mutually assured destruction. We both had leverage, so neither of us would go nuclear. I didn't think he'd actually try to kill me." "But he did. Why do you think he made that move?" "Because he thought he could make it look like an accident. Gas leak, tragic coincidence. No one would suspect murder at an engagement party with 300 witnesses." "And Mrs. Chen's role?" Adrian's jaw tightened. I don't know. Maybe she was involved from the beginning. Maybe David manipulated her. I honestly don't know which is worse. The interview lasted another hour. Questions about business dealings, threats, enemies, anyone who might have wanted Adrian dead. The list was long. Adrian had burned a lot of bridges building his empire. But the evidence all pointed to David and Vanessa. The money trail was clear. The contractor had already confessed to everything except who specifically gave him the orders, but the payment came from David's trust. That was enough for attempted murder charges. After the detectives left, Adrian looked exhausted. "Get some rest," Elena said. "Can't. Physical therapy starts tomorrow. I need to be ready." "Adrian, I'm going to walk again, Elena. I don't care what it takes. I'm not staying in this bed any longer than absolutely necessary." The determination in his voice was absolute, unbreakable. Elena recognized it because she felt the same thing. They'd both been through hell in the past 2 weeks, but they'd survived. And survival meant fighting back. Physical therapy was brutal. Elena watched through the window as 2 therapists helped Adrian into a standing position for the first time since the surgery. His legs shook violently. Sweat poured down his face. He lasted 15 seconds before they had to ease him back into the wheelchair. But those 15 seconds changed everything. "He's progressing faster than expected," one of the therapists told Elena afterward. "His core strength is good. His determination is, well, it's almost scary. He pushes himself harder than we'd normally allow." "Can he walk?" "Eventually. Whether that's weeks or months, I can't say. Every patient is different, but yes, he'll walk." Elena carried that news like a precious thing. She'd been holding her breath for 2 weeks, waiting to know if Adrian would ever be whole again. Now she knew. Not perfectly whole. Not without scars and pain and long recovery, but whole enough. The media descended like low cultures once the arrests became public. Every news outlet wanted the story of the billionaire nearly murdered by his fiancée and her father. Reporters camped outside the hospital. Photographers tried to sneak into Adrian's room. Elena's face was plastered across every tabloid in New York. Mystery wife saves billionaire from deadly plot. From assistant to hero, the woman who stopped a murder. Elena Cade, the most dangerous woman in New York. Catherine managed the press with surgical precision, carefully worded statements, strategic leaks to friendly journalists, a narrative that painted Elena as the loyal wife and Adrian as the resilient survivor. But Elena knew the truth was messier than the headlines. She'd married Adrian for money and self-preservation. He'd married her for strategic advantage. They'd entered a transaction, not a romance, except something had shifted along the way. She'd sat by his bedside for 2 weeks, fought his battles, watched him struggle through pain and fear and crushing determination. And he trusted her with his company, his life, his recovery. That had to mean something. Thursday afternoon, Richard called with news about the board. Thomas Warren resigned this morning. 2 of David's other supporters are requesting leave of absence. The bloc is collapsing. What about the others? Scrambling to distance themselves from David, no one wants to be associated with attempted murder. Patricia's organizing a formal vote of confidence for Monday. It's mostly symbolic at this point, but it'll make Adrian's position unassailable. Exactly. You did it, Elena. You saved his company. After Richard hung up, Elena sat in the hospital cafeteria drinking terrible coffee and trying to process everything. 2 weeks ago, she'd been nobody. An invisible assistant fetching coffee and scheduling meetings. Now she'd dismantled a murder conspiracy, fought off a hostile takeover, and become the public face of one of New York's most powerful companies. She wasn't sure if she should laugh or cry. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You think you've won. You haven't." Elena deleted it without responding. The death threats had been constant since the arrests. Catherine said they'd decrease once the trial started and people moved on to the next scandal. But Elena wasn't so sure. She'd made enemies, powerful ones. People didn't forget that easily. Friday morning, Adrian stood unassisted for 3 minutes. Elena was there when it happened. She'd been bringing him coffee, expensive coffee from the place 3 blocks away, not the hospital vending machine, when she walked into his room and found him on his feet. The therapist stood nearby, ready to catch him if he fell. But Adrian was holding himself up, hands braced on the parallel bars, legs shaking but functional. Adrian, don't, he said through gritted teeth. If you distract me, I'll fall. Elena set the coffee down and waited. 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes. At 3 minutes and 14 seconds, his legs gave out. The therapist caught him, eased him into the wheelchair. Adrian was breathing hard, his face flushed with exertion, but he was smiling. Did you see that? He asked. I saw. 3 minutes. Next time it'll be 5, then 10. Then I'll walk across this room. Adrian, you just had major surgery 3 weeks ago. And I'm going to walk out of this hospital under my own power if it kills me. The doctors were concerned about his pace. Dr. Reeves pulled Elena aside after the session and expressed worry about Adrian pushing too hard, risking re-injury. He won't listen to me, Elena said. He barely listens to you. Then we limit his therapy sessions. Mandatory rest periods. That'll just make him find ways to practice on his own, probably when no one's watching and he'll hurt himself worse. Dr. Reeves sighed. He's the most stubborn patient I've ever treated. That's why he's still alive. The weekend passed in a blur of physical therapy, press statements, and legal consultations. David and Vanessa were both denied bail, flight risk, and severity of charges. Their trial was set for 6 months out, which meant 6 months of media coverage, depositions, and reliving the night of the explosion over and over. Catherine warned Elena to prepare for the scrutiny. Defense lawyers would try to paint her as an opportunist who'd manipulated Adrian while he was vulnerable. They'd dig into her past, her motivations, everything she'd ever said or done. They'll make you the villain to save their clients, Catherine said. It's a standard defense strategy. Shift blame to the person who can't be prosecuted. So what do I do? Tell the truth. You saved Adrian's life. Everything else flows from that. Monday morning arrived with unseasonable warmth. Elena dressed carefully, gray suit, conservative jewelry, hair down for once. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw someone who'd aged a decade in 3 weeks. The board meeting started at 10. Elena arrived early, set up in Adrian's office, prepared for whatever came next. The video call to Adrian's hospital room connected at exactly 10 a.m. He appeared on screen, sitting upright without assistance. Behind him, the parallel bars were visible, a quiet reminder of how far he'd come. Patricia called the meeting to order. Thank you all for coming. Today's agenda is straightforward. In light of recent events and Adrian's remarkable recovery, I'm calling for a formal vote of confidence in his continued leadership of Cade Industries. It was a formality. Everyone knew how this would end, but formalities mattered in corporate governance. All in favor? Every hand went up, even the former members of David's bloc who distanced themselves from the scandal. Motion carries unanimously. Adrian, the board stands with you. On screen, Adrian nodded. Thank you. I know the past few weeks have been difficult. The explosion, the arrests, the uncertainty about my recovery. But I want you to understand something. I didn't build this company to abandon it when things got hard. I built it to last, to weather any storm, and that includes this one. When will you return to the office? Someone asked. Physically? I'm targeting 8 weeks from today. I'm walking now with assistance. Within a month, I should be walking unassisted. 2 months, I'll be back at my desk. And in the meantime? Elena continues as my proxy with full authority. She's proven herself more than capable. Any questions about her competence were answered when she outmaneuvered David Chen and saved this company from a hostile takeover. Elena felt heat rise in her face. Public praise from Adrian Cade was rare and valuable. The meeting concluded with updates on pending projects and financial forecasts. Everything was stable. The company had survived the crisis. After the video call ended, Elena sat alone in the office. Her office now, technically. For another 6 weeks at least. Richard knocked on the open door. Lunch? We should celebrate. Celebrate what? Survival, victory, the fact that we're all still employed and not in prison. Elena laughed. It felt good. Okay, but somewhere quiet. I'm tired of being photographed. They went to a small Italian place 3 blocks from Cade Industries. The kind of restaurant with checkered tablecloths and waiters who'd been there for 40 years. Richard ordered wine. Elena ordered pasta. She was too nervous to eat. You know you're allowed to relax now, Richard said. The crisis is over. Is it? David and Vanessa are awaiting trial. Adrian's still in a wheelchair. We have 6 weeks before the board expects him back at full capacity. Oh, all true. But you're not in immediate danger anymore. You can breathe. Elena tried, but breathing felt strange after weeks of running on adrenaline and coffee. What happens after? She asked. After Adrian's back? After the trial ends? After all of this becomes just another story? You collect your 10 million and disappear. That was the deal, right? That was the deal. But, Elena twisted her napkin, but Adrian offered me something else. A real position in the company. COO, equity stake, partnership. Richard set down his wine glass. Are you going to take it? I don't know. 2 weeks ago, I would have said absolutely not. Take the money and run. But now, she paused. I'm good at this, Richard. The corporate warfare, the strategy, making decisions that matter. I spent 3 years being invisible. I don't want to go back to that. Then don't. Adrian doesn't make offers like that lightly. If he's asking you to stay, it's because he means it. Or because he feels obligated. I saved his life. Maybe he thinks he owes me. Adrian K. doesn't do anything out of obligation. He does what serves his interests. And right now, keeping you around serves his interests. Richard leaned forward. The question is, does it serve yours? Elena didn't have an answer. 3 weeks later, Adrian walked out of Mount Sinai Hospital. Not in a wheelchair, not on crutches. On his own 2 feet, moving slowly and carefully, but moving. Elena was there when it happened. So were the cameras, the reporters, the crowd of onlookers who'd gathered to see the billionaire who'd survived murder and paralysis. Adrian ignored them all. He walked 20 feet from the hospital entrance to the waiting car. 20 feet that took 3 minutes. 20 feet that represented 6 weeks of brutal physical therapy and determination that bordered on obsession. He made it to the car and turned back to wave at the crowd. The cameras went wild. Tomorrow's headlines were already written: Miracle Recovery and the Man Who Wouldn't Stay Down. Inside the car, Adrian collapsed against the seat, breathing hard. That was stupid, Elena said. You could have used the wheelchair. I could have, but I didn't. He looked at her. Because I needed them to see. I needed everyone, the board, the investors, the press, David Chen in his jail cell, to see that I'm not broken. I'm not finished. I'm back. The car pulled away from the hospital. Adrian was going home for the first time since the explosion. Not to the penthouse where it happened, that was still a crime scene. To the backup residence where Elena had been living, where they'd both be living now. Are you ready for this? Elena asked. Living with my wife? I think I can manage. The word wife didn't feel strange anymore. They'd been married for 6 weeks, had fought together, survived together, built something neither of them had expected. But they'd never actually lived together. Never had a normal conversation that wasn't about board meetings or medical updates. Never figured out what they were beyond the transaction that had brought them together. The penthouse felt different with Adrian in it, more lived in, less like a museum Elena was afraid to touch. He moved through the space slowly, relearning the geography. The physical therapist had been here yesterday, installing grab bars in the bathroom and adjusting furniture to make everything accessible. But Adrian refused to use any of it. I don't need modifications, he'd said. I need to get stronger. That night, they had dinner together for the first time. Takeout from the Italian place Elena had discovered, eaten at the massive dining table that seated 12. This is weird, Elena said. What is? This. Acting like a normal married couple when we both know this isn't real. Adrian set down his fork. Isn't it? It's a business arrangement. We both agreed to that. We agreed to a lot of things 6 weeks ago. Most of them are irrelevant now. What does that mean? Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then, it means I've been thinking about the divorce clause in our contract. The $10 million you're supposed to get when this ends. Elena's stomach dropped. Are you changing the terms? I'm questioning whether we need to end it at all. Adrian, hear me out. The past 6 weeks, you've been more than just someone playing a role. You saved my life, fought for my company, made decisions I would have made if I'd been conscious. We work well together, Elena, better than I expected. That doesn't mean we should stay married. Why not? We're already legally bound, already living together, already running a company as partners. Why dissolve something that's working? Elena stood, needing space. Because it's not real. We don't love each other. We barely know each other outside of crisis management and corporate warfare. Love is overrated. I love Vanessa, or thought I did. Look how that ended. But partnership, real partnership based on trust and mutual benefit, that's worth something. You're talking about a marriage of convenience. I'm talking about a marriage that works. Isn't that better than romantic delusion? Elena wanted to argue, to tell him that marriage should be more than a strategic alliance. But she'd spent 6 weeks living in this world of power and money and calculated moves. She'd seen how the other half lived, how marriages among the wealthy were often exactly what Adrian was describing, partnerships dressed up as romance. I need to think about it, she said. Take all the time you need. The offer stands. That night, Elena lay awake in the guest bedroom, her bedroom now, staring at the ceiling. Adrian's proposal made sense from a practical standpoint. They worked well together, trusted each other, had built something functional from the wreckage of tragedy. But was functional enough? She'd married him to stop being invisible. Had she succeeded, or just traded one form of invisibility for another? Her phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. Trial date moved up, 3 months instead of 6. Prosecution thinks they have enough evidence for quick conviction. 3 months. That meant 3 months of reliving the explosion, of facing Vanessa and David in court, of having every detail of her relationship with Adrian scrutinized by defense lawyers trying to save their clients. She texted back, I'll be ready. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Adrian continued physical therapy, growing stronger every day. Elena ran the company with increasing confidence. They had dinner together most nights, discussing strategy and decisions like business partners who happened to share a living space. It was functional, efficient, strangely comfortable, but it wasn't love. 2 months after Adrian came home, Elena met Vanessa for the first time since the explosion. It wasn't planned. Elena was leaving the courthouse after a deposition when she saw Vanessa in the hallway with her lawyers. They locked eyes across 20 feet of marble floor. Vanessa looked terrible, thinner, older. The polish gone, replaced by the gaunt appearance of someone who hadn't slept well in months. Her lawyers tried to move her along, but Vanessa stopped. Elena. Elena should have kept walking, should have let Catherine handle any communication, but something made her stop. Vanessa. I want you to know I didn't... Vanessa's voice cracked. I didn't know what my father was planning. The explosion. I didn't know. But you took his money. $50,000 3 months before Adrian almost died. That was for... It was supposed to be for something else, a business investment. I didn't know what he was really planning. Whether you knew or not doesn't change what happened. Adrian almost died. I pulled him out of that fire while you ran away. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. I was scared. I panicked. I know that's not an excuse, but it's not. You're right about that. I loved him. I really did. But my father, he's so convincing. He made it sound reasonable, made me think Adrian was dangerous, unstable. By the time I realized what was really happening, it was too late. Elena wanted to feel sympathy, but all she felt was cold anger. You left him to die, Elena said quietly. Whatever your father did or didn't tell you, that's on you. You made that choice. Vanessa's lawyers pulled her away before she could respond. Elena stood in the empty hallway, her hands shaking. That night, she told Adrian about the encounter. Do you believe her? He asked. That she didn't know about the bomb. I don't know. Does it matter? To the prosecution, yes. To me? Adrian was quiet. No. She left. That's all I need to know about who she really is. I stayed. Yes, you did. It was the closest they'd come to acknowledging the elephant in the room, that what had started as a transaction had become something else, something neither of them quite knew how to name. The trial began on a cold Monday in November, 3 months almost to the day since the explosion that had changed everything. Elena sat in the gallery beside Catherine and Richard, watching the prosecution lay out their case. The money trail, the contractor's testimony, the forensic evidence from the explosion site. It was damning and thorough. David Chen sat at the defense table looking diminished, smaller somehow without his empire around him. His lawyers fought hard, arguing reasonable doubt and circumstantial evidence, but the facts were brutal. Vanessa's trial was separate but simultaneous. Elena attended both, watching the woman who'd almost become Adrian's wife crumble under the weight of evidence and guilt. Adrian testified on the third day. Elena watched him walk to the witness stand, still slow, still careful, but walking. The jury couldn't take their eyes off him. He told the truth about the explosion, about David's attempts to take his company, about waking up paralyzed and fighting his way back. On cross-examination, David's lawyer tried to paint Adrian as a ruthless businessman who'd made enemies through his own actions. Isn't it true, Mr. Cade, that you've destroyed multiple competitors, ruined careers, made yourself a target through your own aggressive business practices? Yes, Adrian said calmly. I've been ruthless in business, but I never tried to murder anyone. That's the difference between business warfare and actual crime. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They found David Chen guilty on all counts: attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later, but everyone knew he was looking at 25 years minimum. Vanessa's jury took longer. 3 days of deliberation. They found her guilty of conspiracy, but acquitted her of attempted murder. The prosecution had failed to prove she knew about the specific plan to kill Adrian. She got 12 years. Elena watched Vanessa being led away in handcuffs and felt nothing but emptiness. Justice was supposed to feel satisfying. Instead, it just felt sad. After the verdicts, Elena and Adrian went back to the penthouse in silence. The media was calling it the trial of the decade. Billionaire nearly murdered by his fiance's father. It had everything: money, betrayal, attempted murder, miraculous recovery. But for Elena and Adrian, it was just the end of a chapter neither of them had asked for. It's over, Adrian said, pouring whiskey in the living room. David's going to prison. Vanessa's going to prison. The company's stable. I'm walking again. You won. We won. He handed her a glass. You were right there with me for all of it. Elena took the whiskey but didn't drink. What happens now? Now? Now we figure out what comes next. The divorce clause. I meant what I said before. I think we should stay married. Not because of the deal or the company or any of that, but because this works. We work. Adrian, you can't base a marriage on convenience. Why not? People base marriages on far less. Attraction fades. Romance dies. But partnership, real partnership built on trust and mutual respect, that lasts. Elena set down her glass. You're asking me to give up the idea of ever finding real love, of building something with someone who actually wants me, not just what I can do for them. I want you, not as an assistant or a proxy, as a partner, an equal. But you don't love me. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. I don't know what love is anymore. I thought I loved Vanessa. That was delusion. But what I feel for you, respect, admiration, trust, that's real. Isn't that worth more? Elena thought about the past 3 months, about sitting beside Adrian's hospital bed, about fighting for his company, about building something together from nothing but determination and desperation. I need time, she said, to figure out what I want, not what's practical or convenient, what I actually want. How much time? I don't know, months maybe. Can you give me that? Adrian nodded. Take as long as you need. The offer stands. Elena went to bed that night with no answers, but for the first time since the explosion, she had space to breathe, to think, to figure out who she wanted to be when the crisis was finally, truly over. 6 months passed. Adrian returned to Cade Industries full-time, walking without assistance, running board meetings, back to his old ruthless efficiency. Elena stayed on as COO, just as he'd offered. The partnership worked. They were building something bigger than either of them had managed alone, but they still lived in the penthouse together. Still had dinner most nights, still existed in this strange liminal space between marriage and business arrangement. One evening in late spring, Elena came home to find Adrian on the terrace. He was standing at the railing looking out over Central Park, the sunset painting everything gold and orange. "You're home early," she said. "So are you." Elena joined him at the railing. The city spread out below them, alive and indifferent to their small dramas. "I've been thinking about your offer," she said, "about staying married." Adrian turned to look at her. And I think you're right." about partnership being worth more than romantic delusion, about what we've built together being real and valuable. But I need you to know that I didn't just marry you for money, and I'm not staying just for the company. I'm staying because—" She paused, searching for the right words. "Because you saw me when no one else did. Because you trusted me when you didn't have to. Because this thing between us, whatever it is, it matters to me." Adrian reached for her hand. It was the first time they'd touched intentionally, not just for show or necessity. His palm was warm against hers. "It matters to me too," he said quietly. "I don't know if this will ever be love. Not the romantic kind people write songs about. Maybe not, but maybe that's okay. Maybe what we have is better, more honest." Elena leaned against the railing, still holding his hand. "So we stay married. We stay married, real partners. No exit clause, no timeline. Just us, figuring it out as we go." "That sounds terrifying." "It does, doesn't it?" Adrian smiled. "But we've survived worse." That night, for the first time, Elena moved her things from the guest bedroom to the master suite. Not because she had to, because she chose to. They slept in the same bed, careful and uncertain. Two people learning how to be vulnerable after months of armor and survival. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. 1 year after the explosion, Elena stood in the same terrace where she and Adrian had decided to stay married. But this time, the space was filled with people. A small gathering. Richard and Catherine, Patricia Okonkwo from the board, Marcus the lawyer, a few of Adrian's business associates who'd proven themselves trustworthy, and Adrian walking toward her without assistance, moving with the slight stiffness that would probably never fully go away but was barely noticeable anymore. "Ready?" he asked. Elena looked down at her dress. Simple, elegant, nothing like the hospital gown she'd been wearing in her mind for months. Ready for what? "To celebrate." He gestured to the crowd. 1 year since the explosion, since you saved my life, since everything changed. This is morbid, Adrian. Who celebrates the anniversary of almost dying? Someone who's grateful to be alive. Someone who wants to acknowledge that the worst night of his life led to the best year. Elena felt unexpected tears prick her eyes. The past year had been brutal. Recovery and trials and learning how to be partners in every sense of the word. But it had also been transformative. She was COO of a multi-billion-dollar company. She had real power, real authority. She'd stopped being invisible, and she'd found something with Adrian that she hadn't expected. Not traditional love, maybe, but partnership, trust, a foundation that felt solid in ways romance never had. "Speech," someone called from the crowd. Adrian raised his glass. 1 year ago, someone planted a bomb at my engagement party. They intended to kill me. They nearly succeeded, but they didn't account for one thing. He turned to Elena. They didn't account for the woman who would run into a burning building while everyone else ran away, who would drag me down 43 flights of stairs, who would fight for my company and my life when she had every reason to walk away. The crowd was silent, listening. Elena Cade saved my life. But more than that, she gave me something I didn't know I needed. A real partner. Someone who challenges me, matches me, makes me better. This year hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. All of it. He raised his glass higher. To survival, to second chances, to the people who stay when everything falls apart. To staying, the crowd echoed. Elena clinked her glass against Adrian's. Across the terrace, the sun was setting over Manhattan. The same view she'd had that first night when everything was still uncertain and terrifying. But now she had answers. Not all of them, maybe not even most of them, but enough. She'd stayed when she could have run, and in staying, she'd found herself. Later that night, after the guests had left and the city had gone dark, Elena and Adrian stood on the terrace together. "I have something to tell you," Elena said. Adrian turned to look at her. "Should I be worried?" "Maybe. Probably not. I don't know." She took a breath. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them. They'd been careful. Mostly. But careful wasn't the same as perfect. Adrian stared at her. "How long have you known?" 2 weeks. I wanted to wait until after the anniversary to tell you." "Are you—" He stopped. "What do you want to do?" "I want to keep it, if you're okay with that. I know this wasn't part of the plan, Plans change. Adrian reached for her hand again, that simple gesture that had become their anchor. This is good. Scary, but good. You're sure? I'm sure. A year ago, I was paralyzed in a hospital bed, wondering if I'd ever walk again. Now I'm standing here with you talking about our future. Yeah, I'm sure. Elena leaned into him, not because she had to, because she wanted to. This is really happening, she said. We're really doing this. We are. It's terrifying. Good thing we're both good at being terrified and doing it anyway. Elena laughed. It felt good. Natural. Like something that had been locked away for years finally finding its way out. 9 months later, Elena gave birth to a daughter at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Adrian was there, holding her hand through every contraction, every push, every moment of pain and fear and overwhelming joy. When the doctor placed the baby in Elena's arms, she looked down at the tiny face and felt something shift in her chest. Not the crack from a year and a half ago. Something else. Something opening instead of breaking. She has your eyes, Adrian said softly. She has your stubborn chin. We're doomed then. 2 stubborn people raising a stubborn child. Elena looked up at him. At this man who'd been her boss, her husband, her partner, who'd survived assassination and paralysis and fought his way back from the edge. I love you, she said. Adrian went very still. They'd never said those words before, had carefully avoided them, afraid of what they might mean or destroy. You don't have to say that, he said quietly. I know, but it's true, not the romantic delusion kind, the real kind, the kind that's built on trust and partnership and choosing each other every day. Adrian touched their daughter's tiny hand. She wrapped her fingers around his, holding on with surprising strength. I love you too, he said finally. I think I have for a while. I just didn't know how to say it. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. They still fought about business decisions and parenting strategies and who forgot to buy milk. Life continued with all its messiness and complications. But they'd built something real, something that had started in fire and chaos and somehow transformed into family. 2 years after the explosion, Cade Industries announced a new charitable foundation, the Elena Cade Foundation for Trauma Recovery. Millions of dollars dedicated to helping people rebuild after violent crime, medical crisis, and life-altering injury. Elena gave the announcement herself, standing in front of cameras without fear, without the need to be invisible. 2 years ago, I was nobody, she told the assembled reporters. I was invisible, overlooked, someone who existed in the background while important people made important decisions. Then an explosion changed everything. It forced me to choose, run away or stay, hide or fight, be invisible or step into the light. I chose to stay, and in staying I found out who I really was, someone strong enough to pull a man from a burning building, someone brave enough to fight for what mattered, someone who refused to be invisible anymore. She looked at Adrian standing beside her, their daughter in his arms. This foundation exists because I believe everyone deserves a second chance. Everyone deserves the opportunity to rebuild after tragedy, to find strength they didn't know they had, to become the person they were always meant to be. The greatest power isn't control or money or influence. It's choosing to stay when everything falls apart. It's refusing to give up on yourself or the people who matter. It's building something real from the wreckage of what was. That's what we're doing here. That's what this foundation represents. Second chances, real recovery, the power of staying. The cameras flashed. The reporters shouted questions. But Elena just smiled. She'd stopped being invisible, and she was never going back.